Howdy everybody, welcome to the Indie Scientology podcast. I'm your host Andy Nolch, the Space Cowboy, and isn't it lovely to be here listening to the good old Strauss? This is the podcast that has everything to do with the interesting world of Scientology. Yes, that funky religion you might have heard about. If you don't know what Scientology is, then listen to the first few episodes of this podcast where I explain it. I answer basic questions about Scientology. Today's guest interview is with Jonathan Burke, part 3 with Johnny Burke, the Indie Auditor from the Advanced Organisation of the Great Plains. How did you like last podcast with Jonathan Burke? Part 2 with Jonathan Burke. Yes, when you find someone who's interesting, you gotta milk them like a cow. They're worth many interviews. And Jonathan Burke's time is very appreciated. He knows some very interesting things, and the interviews just keep going. Now it's time to go down that rabbit hole into the world of Scientology. Up is down, down is up, left is right, right is left. What you thought was impossible is possible. Welcome to the podcast. This 17th of October 2017. There's something on my mind. The podcast is being internet attacked by OSA, I assume. But sometimes, apparently, when people click on the videos on YouTube to listen to them, they won't load or something, or it doesn't allow them to do it. And on the podcast app, it does the same thing where it loads again, and it says this podcast isn't available. Some other people have told me this, and also I had it happen to me with the podcast app on my phone. And then the next day I tried it and it worked. So if you having any of that happen, I would just give up and try the next day, and hopefully it works the next day. These are just how things are. Who cares? Whatever. Recently I deleted everything on my computer and stored everything back again to try and clean my computer up for any viruses and attacks or whatever that I've been getting. And I think I just noticed about half an hour ago that I might have another sort of virus thing again. The computer was thinking a lot when there was no reason why it should be thinking a lot. Anyway, that's just how things are. It shows that we must be doing some interesting things. Exciting things. Okay, in Scientology news, the Church of Scientology has opened a new ideologue in Dublin, and that makes for 60 new buildings or ideologues or whatever in the past 15 years. 60 since they started the whole ideal program thing, probably in 2004 or something. 60. That's a lot. They've renovated a lot of buildings and built a lot of buildings and stuff, and it looks very nice on the outside, very aesthetic. This Dublin ideologue looks very good, but that's a lot. That's 60. They did up the Melbourne org, they did up New York org, this one, that one, and then they built community centres, and they built policy centres or something, or ideal narconons, I think, and they made advanced orgs. It's heaps. It's a lot of mess. So I just thought I'd better mention that. Okay, now here is an independent Scientology win of the week, and this relates a bit to the interview because it's a PC who was being audited by Pierre, and Pierre's mentioned in this interview, and these higher OT levels like OT9 and stuff is mentioned in the coming interview. So I thought it'd be fitting to mention this win of the week. So it says starting OT9. Starting OT9 has been awesome. Already I find myself more in control of my environment and find that it is not nearly as threatening as I had supposed. I have come to realize that there were things about people's character or their universe that I could be responsible for and change or not change as I decided. By looking for what I disagreed with and then discovering that I could accept it, I found that my understanding of others increased considerably and consequently my ARC for them. Just a few days ago, a dear friend of mine called to say that she had pneumonia. She wanted to know if I could help. I took a look at her body and found a problem in each lung. These problems seemed to be at odds with each other. The turbulence created was causing her illness. By thoroughly viewing the cause of the problem, it vanished. The next day, she reported that she was out of bed and feeling so much better. A couple of days later, she was over the sickness. It looks like there was a bit of as-isness going on there, like you look at something as it is. And it's very funny whenever as-isness happens, because I was visiting my grandma today in a nursing home, and she was mentioning to me someone in the room next to us and how she was criticizing the guy's wife, and she goes, apparently he's got a wife but she never comes or whatever, and she was criticizing, right? So she as is the fact that his wife never comes, because then 10 minutes later we walk past the room and the wife is visiting her, and me and my grandma laughed because it was like, haha, that's funny that grandma's there just after you mentioned that she never comes. So I feel like my grandma as is it. You see something for how it is, and kids use the word jinx. They go, oh, I jinxed that, you know? Oh, the weather's been really good at work. Oh, don't say that, you're going to jinx it, then you jinx it. It's just funny as-ising. Anyway, I'll continue this. I consider myself fortunate to have Pierre as my auditor and CS. The auditing is without doubt far superior than any other I've received. The supervision has allowed my own auditing to flow without stops and always on track. And that's by JB. More initials with success stories. People should put their names in these success stories. Okay, if you want to do independent Scientology, yeah, contact Pierre. You can find him on the internet. Send an email. You can contact the organisation The Great Plains, which Jonathan Burke which he runs. And you could try Ronsorg in Europe, and there's the Association of Professional Independent Auditors all over the world. There's Lana Mitchell in Australia with her Milestone 2. I was going to say Milestone 1, but that's a LIH lecture or something. Anyway, yeah, just send out emails and search it on the internet, and yeah, you can find it. Okay, it is time now for a Scientology joke. Let's have some hope for this one. All right. Why don't Scientologists eat pickles? They can't get their head in the jar. Okay. All right. Okay, it's time now for the guest interview with Jonathan Burke, Part 3, the man from the advanced organisation of the Great Plains in Middle America. We discussed some deep topics, and he drops some bombs again. And the first hour and a half is like, whoa, it was pretty deep. There was a moment as well where John sort of went exterior. And I just want to mention when he said he went exterior and was in the room with me, right? Because he was on the other side of the world. But when he said when he goes, I'm in the room with you, right? Like when he was doing his exterior thing, I did notice. I perceived something in the room. There was a change in the room. I did perceive almost some sort of energy. I just wanted to mention that. Okay, because there's a moment where like during the interview where casually like he's like, "Hey, all right, I'm exterior right now. I'm in the room with you or whatever," and I just wanted to mention that I did feel that there was something different in the room. I guess that sort of sensation, if you ever noticed a ghost being in a room, like not when you see, like I've actually never seen a ghost, but I perceived ghosts in rooms or whatever. Like you hear a little creak on the floor, and you can feel there's some sort of presence. And I had a little bit of that when he said he was going exterior and he was in the room with me, a little bit of that. But maybe in my next interview with John, I might test him a little bit more on that exterior thing. It'd be quite interesting. So I just thought I'd mention that. So you're going to like this interview. Let's dig into this. Let's hear some talk about the McDonald's of religions, the Cadillac of cults, Scientology. All right, it's now time for part 3 of my interview with Jonathan Burke, the runner, the mission holder of the Advanced Organization of the Great Plains in Middle America. Are you there, John?
I am. Thank you for having me, Andy.
Great, good. You ready for part 3? You excited? I got a lot of questions for you.
I'm ready.
Oh, there's a lot. All right, just quickly, I'll ask you about some past life stuff, because something I don't understand is it seems like a ton of Scientologists died in 1963 or something and then reincarnated. What do you think of that?
I've never heard that myself. As far as 1963,
not that specific year, but it's just like the one thing that I found very surprising since I got into Scientology is the amount of people who are like, yeah, I was into it last lifetime, and they seem to have died sometime in the 60s and then been born again. And it's just like, to me, mathematically, it's not making any sense. Like, as in, there was no great wave of mass killing off of Scientologists in the 60s or something. How come there's all these reincarnated psyos walking around these days?
Well, I guess the first question I'd have to ask is, how old are they, and is it feasibly possible for them to have died in the 60s and then be an adult now? Or I guess, you could have gone and sat on a mountaintop for a couple of decades or something like that. But I think one of the things that needs to be explained to people from the viewpoint of not necessarily an OT, I guess, it could be an OT viewpoint, but time in the physical universe and no time in the theta universe are the constants. It would be sort of like, I don't know. If you were swimming around off of the coast of East Australia, and then you got into the East Australian current and things sped up because you were in this current that's going up the eastern side of Australia, that would be a prime example of what it's like to be in the physical universe and then be in the theta universe. So you can blip over into the theta universe. Let's say you drop the body. And when you drop the body and you're no longer sticking your toe into the physical universe, time, as you know it, stops. But it's actually going a lot faster in the physical universe. So let's say you dropped the body in 1963, you left the physical universe and didn't have anything to do with it per se, and we're just a thetan in the theta universe. And you go, all right, to you it seems like, I don't know, a second or a few minutes or whatever. And then it's been maybe a couple of decades that you come back, because they're not constants next to each other. The theta universe has no time. So that's something that needs to be explained to people, because it is a factor. And if a thetan isn't ready for that, they could drop the body in 1920 and they come back and all of a sudden they're picking up a body in 1983. I mean, those things happen, and you run into that sort of thing in session where there isn't a constant of time for a being, because the theta universe isn't a physical universe. It isn't made up of points of view and anchor points and things like that, and Nest moving around Nest, going around a star and all this stuff. It's a completely different universe. So the rules don't apply the same. So I don't find it surprising that people come back. I don't know if you've ever heard the story of Wing Angel. Does that name ring a bell?
No.
Wing Angel, Pat Krennick could tell you who Wing Angel was, because Pat's been around since like 1952. And it was actually, at one point in time, it was in the OEC Vols, and Wing Angel was a very well-known Scientologist in the late 50s and 1960s. And don't quote me on the years on this, and I'm sure somebody will post it on Facebook a week from now and say, well, this is when it happened. But anyway, Wing Angel was a well-known, very trained, savvy OT Scientologist. And he dropped the body. And about 4 or 5 years later, this 5-year-old boy walks up the Washington, D.C. org steps, walks in the door, sort of swaggering, walks up to the receptionist and says, "I'm Wing Angel, and I'd like my certificates back."
Yeah, I've heard about this. Yeah,
this is a true story.
I've heard a similar story. Yeah, like a 14-year-old Taiwanese kid went up to the Sea Org and was like, "Hi, I'm reporting back in for duty," because Sea Org is supposed to come back. But why was the word Wing Angel used? Was that like a nickname that he had in his past life or something?
Well, that was his name in the life prior to the new one that he had gotten.
But who has the name Wing Angel? It's a really wacky name.
It's a very odd name, but it's also a very distinct name, and that was his name that his parents gave him, was first name Wing, last name Angel.
And so did they actually find the PC folders for Wing Angel and all that sort of stuff? Yeah,
he got his certs back and everything, and from what I understand, his parents were cool with it. I don't know what happened to him after that, but it is a true story. I did know him in '56, around the time that I went clear on one of the ACCs, and he was very, very much involved in Scientology in the formative days in the late '50s and early '60s.
So hold on. So when did this Wing Angel as a young kid walk into the org? What year was that?
That's what I was saying. I don't recall the actual dates anymore. All I know is that when I read about it, they were at one point still in the green and white Vols back in probably the late 80s, early 90s, before there was a severe cleaning of the house of any of the names of people that were involved in the original founding organizations, like Red Sharp or Mary Sue. All those names have been deleted from the briefing course lectures and all the OEC Vault long ago. Wing Angel was one of those people.
Oh, was Wing Angel was his name actually mentioned in any of the thingos?
Yeah.
Oh, so he was a real important, founder.
Yeah, he was one of the main guys that worked. I believe worked in DC org at the time.
Like top old timers is probably a good word to call them.
Yeah, top old timers. I mean, you could ask some guys, that are still around. Like I said, like Pat Krennick could tell you. Pair of Shots probably could tell you. Candy Swanson might be able to tell you a little bit more about him, but a lot of the original old timers, there aren't many left.
So you reckon he came back in the late 80s or something like that?
No, he came back in the mid 60s. It wasn't.
Well, again, this is another situation where I'm saying where it's like, what the hell's going on?
What do you mean?
Well, as in, it's like all these people, it seems like a lot of psyos, old-timers, died around 1960, reincarnated, and came back. And whether they popped in the 70s or the 80s or the 90s or the 2000s, it just seems to be so many of them must have died in this around 1960.
Well, I couldn't really say. I mean, just from an auditor standpoint, I haven't audited people in that age bracket really at all. I've audited people that died in the late 60s or 70s quite a bit. I mean, I died in 67 and then picked up a body in, the next year in 68. So, I mean, there's people drop bodies. I don't think it has any
but do you think,
factor.
but for me, that's evidence that time in the Theta universe or whatever doesn't run in a linear fashion. Because then,
Right.
then statistics would have, I just feel like there would have been all these reports about all these, I don't know, it's just, it doesn't make sense. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in, you come across heaps of people who are old-time sires who died, yet I don't hear any reports about a mass killing off of old-time sires in the early 60s.
Well, I don't really have an explanation for it other than the ebb and flow of the physical universe and the theta universe are mysterious things, and you run into interesting phenomena like that from time to time. That's the only thing I could say about that. Is it's more of an observation than anything.
So we just don't understand. Well, either reincarnation doesn't exist, or we don't understand how time works outside of current simple understanding.
Well, I think that's the biggest factor is Scientology deals with the physical universe and the thetans that are in the physical universe. It doesn't necessarily deal with the thetans that are in the theta universe as much, so therefore there isn't as much documentation or valid data on it. What I was telling you earlier, that's something I've never had any other Scientologist tell me before, and I've never even had a conversation, even with other OT8s or above, about it. But that's been my own observation and knowingness since doing the OT levels, that you're dealing with, it's sort of like two different what do they call those? Not escalators, but when you're in an airport and you have the two moving floors that are like escalators, but they're on one level only, and one's going a lot faster than the other. The theta universe is timeless because it doesn't involve the physical universe. The physical universe revolves around planets going around suns and electrons going around, in atoms and all of this stuff, and you don't have that in the theta universe. So it's a there-ness. It's there, but it's nowhere at the same time because there's no there. There's no anchor point. So therefore, there is no time. It's timeless.
Yeah.
So what might seem to a thetan to be a couple of seconds could be a couple of decades in the physical universe, as an extreme, as an example.
Yeah, but also I think time goes at a different speed on different planets. So even within the physical universe, I think time is totally trippy and just what the hell.
Yeah,
Have you heard that?
What's that?
Have you heard that time goes at different speeds on different planets or something? And yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you just look at Einstein's theory of relativity and gravity affects time, space, and what like for example, what's faster than the speed of light?
These apparently UFO craft. But I don't think that they actually travel. That's the thing. I think they hack into the universe and somehow just pop and appear in certain places.
Well, that's the point. The point is what's faster than light
Nothing.
is gravity.
Gravity
Is faster than light. Yeah, gravity is instantaneous.
Gravity is instantaneous. Wow.
Yeah. So that's why these starcraft use gravity, or they interpret gravity, or create gravity.
Yeah, because they're anti-gravity craft or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you watch the what's his name? The guy that used to work at Area 51. Just forgot his name.
Bob Lazar.
Bob Lazar. You watch his videos. He gives the best explanation of how at least the Zeta Reticuli craft work, in that it's sort of a focusing of gravity, and if you focus in on a particular star and its gravity, it's sort of like going downhill towards that star, and you amplify it, and then there you are, and you're going faster than the speed of light because you're creating gravity which deforms the physical universe, so to speak. So that's how these guys get around as quick as they do, relatively speaking, to the speed of light, at least.
Yeah, because it's funny, because it's like, yeah, something can't go faster than this, like, something can't go faster than the speed of light because it's not possible, right? But these craft, they're not traveling that distance. They're doing this shifty, clever thing. So it's like they're beating the speed of light, but they're not really. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, they're kind of circumventing the speed of light by tricking the physical universe using gravity or mocking gravity up instead of dealing with all of the surrounding different types of gravity, whether it's a star or whether it's a planet or, whatever. I mean, and there are those that say that a planet, for example, doesn't create gravity. It's because of the star that it's near. That's what's creating the gravity. I can neither confirm or deny that, but it rings sort of true because it's just like electricity on planet Earth. We don't know why electricity works. We just know that it does to this day.
Did Einstein know that gravity travels faster than the speed of light?
I think he had some ideas on it, but he passed away sooner than he could actually get that into some sort of unified form. I mean, as far as his theory of relativity goes, the faster you go, the greater the mass increases of the body that's going fast. So that's an issue if you're going to try and go beyond the speed of light. But, they just recently confirmed in the last couple of weeks that gravity does travel in waves, that they actually picked up on one of these devices that picks up the changes in gravity. And now they know that gravity works in waves. So that's one of the big steps that they needed to validate what Einstein said, and it's also a way to travel if you're going to use a starship that's going to travel faster than the speed of light, because now they know that you can create a gravity wave.
Well, it's interesting
because other celestial objects do that, and we just saw a gravity wave go through Earth from several billion, trillion miles away. It was a long time ago.
What's interesting as well is as you travel faster, time slows down. So time is just such a trippy thing.
Right, because it's all of these things are interwoven, and like Ellerich says in the Axioms, and there are universes. You find out very quickly, especially on the upper OT levels, that there are other universes, and you are aware of them, you become aware of them, and that some of the things that are part of your case or part of the composite case are existing in them.
Now, hold on a second. Are you talking about there are other dimensions or there are other things that you just can't perceive, right? Or something totally in a whole other universe?
I would have to say yes to both of them.
Yeah.
To answer that question, because there are.
It's so trippy because there's this thing that's like that when you hear about other universes, you just think, well, hold on a second, it's all right here, right now. It's just that you've only got the five senses that can perceive them. So I don't know if you can call them other universes. I think it's just, you know what I mean? I think it's just maybe we just don't have enough perceptions.
Well, Ellerich back in the mid-50s was talking about, he knew he had to get Dianetics published because he knew there was another guy out there named L. Ron Hubbard who was working on the same book, and he needed to get the book out before this other L. Ron Hubbard got it out, which he came to realize was in what we would now call a parallel universe. It wasn't in this universe, but it was a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right. But he had become aware of the fact that one of his alternates was working on something similar or exactly the same. I mean, he talks about it in a couple of lectures.
But why was he concerned about competing with him or something like that? Because they're separate universes.
Well, at the time, he wasn't aware that it was a different universe.
Oh, so he thought it might have been in this universe or something, and so he was trying to compete with himself.
Right. So he was concerned that there was another guy out there that was doing the same thing. And as he continued to get processing, he came to realize that it was, for lack of a better expression, a universe to the left or a universe to the right, which would be a very poor example of it. But it gives the idea that it was not too far from our own universe that this was going on, and he was aware of it.
This sort of stuff is so deep and so trippy, but there's evidence for it, and there's a lot of, I think, scientists that are into like looking into parallel universes and stuff, and it's areas that I just don't even want to go near because it's like it's so deep. But I mean, I've had things happen to me that are quite odd that have made me thought, hold on a second, have I gone into some sort of parallel universe and stuff? And people talk about these sorts of things. Like one time I had a TV remote on the coffee table in front of me and it suddenly wasn't there. And I was looking where it usually is and it wasn't there. And I was like, what the hell? And I felt around for a bit, and I was aware of this whole parallel universe where sometimes you pop out of your current universe and you go into the parallel one, and you don't notice except for one odd change. And so, I'd heard about this idea, and so I thought, well, I'll just wait and see if it pops back or something, if it comes back. And then, like, the next day, suddenly it just came back, and it was where it was supposed to be, and I was like, what the hell? And I asked people in the house, if they'd moved the remote and put it back, and they hadn't. Like, it literally just bizarrely disappeared. And the only thing I can think of is this parallel universe thing, because I've heard other people talk about it, and they'd say stuff like they would walk out of their house, and there would suddenly be a tree where there never used to be a tree, like on the street. And they'll be like, what the hell, there never used to be a tree there. And then like a week later, suddenly the tree will be gone and there'll be no evidence that the tree was ever pulled away. It was just like the tree was suddenly gone. And it was like evidence of a parallel universe. And since I got into Scientology, I've had a fair few experiences where suddenly I'm like looking and I'm like, what the hell? I never knew there was a door there. There never was a door there. Never used to be a door there. And I was like, you don't know what to do. You don't know to think, is my memory just bad or what? But you're just like, what the hell? And then you hear about the Mandela effect, and you're like, what the hell? Like, it's just so trippy.
Well, I knew where we were heading towards that. So I'm prepared. As far as the Mandela effect goes, I think that would be, as far as a symbol or a term, that would be one way to describe a parallel or alternate universe or something like that. But I think in a lot of the cases, not all, but a lot of the cases, the Mandela effect is a bit of what LRH would call dub-in. And it's a group think type of a thing where, what was his name? The comedian, the black comedian, was in a movie as a... What was his name?
Eddie Murphy.
No, it was. Dang it! He's one of the taller black comedians, and this is one of the Mandela effects.
Richard Pryor or something.
It was sort of like an Arabian name that he gave himself. I'm trying to think.
Chappelle,
anyway.
Dave Chappelle or something.
No. Well, anyway, so this was one of the things that he never did this movie where he played Aladdin, was what he was supposed to play, and he never played Aladdin. But I really
the Kazam guy. Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah.
And that's one of those things. But I don't think that it's as broad sweeping, because it's a lot of the Mandela effect stuff is in pop culture. And I think that should be discounted heavily, and on a more individual by individual basis, I think you'll find things that, like you're talking about, like there was a door there, or there was a tree there. I mean, you're looking in these sorts of ways. You're looking at things from a viewpoint of symbology, because when one goes up the OT levels, for example, after a while, words get in the way, and you stop using words in session. You don't need to use words in session because you can convey concepts across to what it is that you're auditing much faster without using the via of a symbol, like the letter S that is next to 5 other letters that make up another symbol that is a word that represents a concept that then maybe has 5 or 8 or 20 or 30 definitions or whatever. So when you step away from the symbology of things, then you start to open yourself up to perceptions that you would not normally have, because you're stepping away from the physical universe. This is what happens in the OT levels naturally. I think that some people do this. I could say, like swamis, for example, and stuff like that, would be other prime examples, or monks in Tibet, that sort of a thing. They step away from looking at everything from a symbolic viewpoint, and they start to work in concepts of thought. And when you do that, then you start to become aware of an awful lot of things, because you're using all of these vias that consist of the physical universe that keep you ensconced in the physical universe. So that's why I say I think a lot of the pop culture stuff, you'd be better off, when I say you, the royal you, would be better off discounting and just taking individual basis by basis type things, because when you get into the groupthink thing on the internet and everything, it's a little bit more of a dicey proposition. There's a website called Half Past Time, and what they do is they have a bunch of web crawlers, and what they do is they crawl the web for all of these keywords and all of these concepts and everything, and they basically take the internet as one reactive mind, and they make predictions based off of what the group think is on the internet. And they can say, basically looking at it from a prophecy type of viewpoint, that something's going to happen at this time in this place based off of what people are talking about.
Yeah, I've heard about this, like where Google or something is trying to find out like the mind of God or something, where they do this, where they have all the data from all the computers from everyone, and they can just predict things and just, I don't know, it's just so deep.
Yeah, that's the collective. There's another prime example of this would be there was a random number generator that was being monitored in England at one of the major colleges. And this random number generator started generating numbers in a different way randomly when 9/11 occurred.
Yeah, I've heard that, yeah. Hold on a second, go back to what you're saying before that, and try and be quick, because this is just such a deep topic.
Well, the point I'm trying to make is about the Half Past Time website is it's a really neat project, but the thing is that you're looking at this information on the internet through individuals who all have reactive minds, who have composite cases with reactive minds. So it would be sort of like adding another number to the equation that would always give you an incorrect sum when you added up the equation, or whatever the value was that you were trying to get, whether it was an algorithm or whatever, because you're dealing with reactive minds, and then you're getting into this agreement, this group think. And whether it's group think or whether it's individuals who no longer have their own reactive minds and are way past OT umpty-ump or whatever, you're going to get two different equations, you're going to get two different sums, because you're looking at something where you have a bunch of reactive minds postulating something. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't postulate it. It just means that they might get a different result than those who are more pro-survival or have a different viewpoint. Maybe it's not pro-survival. I'm not saying that OTs necessarily always postulate pro-survival things, but and I'm not saying that they do or they don't. I'm just saying for the sake of the conversation. So basically what I'm trying to say is that when you see these large collected data sets from the internet like Half Past Time uses, you're getting a knee-jerk reaction to a stimulus response assimilation of groupthink. Whereas if you were doing it with 1.5 million OTs or something like that, you might see an entirely different result of what the perception was that was going to happen in the future. So it would be very interesting to see that if you gathered all of the OTs on the planet, whether they'd done Scientology or not, but were still OT, which there are, and you got them all in the same room and they were all perceiving at the same time and postulating, whether they would be perceiving the same things that, I don't know, probably 3.5 billion people on the internet were perceiving that might be coming in the future. It would be a very interesting experiment because I think you would get drastically different results. That's basically what I'm trying to say, is because we create our own reality. That doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be the reality that we don't want, which is what we generally get as a whole in the population on planet Earth, and we need to change that. That's what Scientology is all about.
Oh man, this is just such a deep topic. I don't know how we got onto this whole non-Scientology sort of related stuff. It's
that's
so
all right. What
deep.
were other questions? I'm sorry to get off on a left.
No. I mean, it needs to happen to properly handle things. Need to go off, but it's just like, it's just something where you can do a whole podcast like on one of these things. It's so deep. But I'm pretty damn certain the Mandela effect's going on. Like, have you seen the video from me that I did on the Kink where I was interviewing people on the street about it?
A little bit of it, yes, I did.
Yeah. Well, there's all these Aussies that think that America used to have 52 states. And it's like, what the hell? And I looked it up like 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago. I specifically looked it up, how many states America has. And I remember locking into my mind that it was above 50. It was like 51, 52, 53, in that range. Above 50. It was locked in my mind. I was like, it's above 50. And then suddenly I found out America has 50 states, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? It's so bizarre. It's just so bizarre. And then I asked people on the street how many states does America have, and on average, most people thought it was 52. And you're like, what the hell? And most people think it's mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all.
Uh-huh.
It's so bizarre.
Yeah,
you know,
well,
I think it's parallel universes. I think it's, huh?
I think a little bit of that is misinterpretation, because the United States has 50 states and then has Puerto Rico and Guam. Now, for us, we know that it's 50 states because we're indoctrinated to think that when we're in elementary school that we have 50
I know,
states.
but I looked it up on Wikipedia, how many thingos just recently. You know what I mean? Like 2.5 years ago. And recently look it up on Wikipedia now. It says 50 states. And so that's where I'm so... And I remember sex in the city. And I specifically remember around 2010 or something, it started becoming Sex and the City. And I was just like, huh? And then I remember watching the Darth Vader movie and specifically waiting for that famous line where it says, Luke, I am your father. And, it didn't come. And I was just like... I don't know, but I feel like I before I even found out about the Mandela effect, I felt like I went into some sort of bizarro world, like around 2010 or something, where things were just odd and not quite the same. You know what I mean? And then
I understand what you're saying. I can say for a fact, without reservation, that that's what the character said in the movie when I saw it in that would have been 1980, I believe it was. That Empire came out, he did say, Luke, I am your father.
See how funny it is? It's just like, because I think it's a parallel universes thing or something, but it's odd. I guess maybe there's been a lot of changes, but people are only aware of the movie line changes because it's a pop culture thing. But I know that I had something happen with speed humps that was near my house, where they suddenly there was like 3 and then now there's suddenly 1. And I was like, what the hell happened to the other 2 speed humps? And they hadn't been removed or anything. And it was just bizarre. And then I had a neighbor who was Japanese, and then Chinese, and then switched back to being Japanese. And I was like, what the hell? And there's people who talk about this Mandela effect where it changes and then it changes back. So, I mean, it's so interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, like you said, I don't think that it is entirely impossible that those things happen, but I will say that those things don't happen near as much the longer you go up the bridge and the further you go up the bridge.
Yeah, because
I have no explanation for it, but that's been my observation with myself and other people.
Yeah. Can you finish explaining this? The winged angel person? So the winged angel person said enough information about their past life that the staff there were like, okay, this is definitely the person, right? And
yeah, they asked him some questions, and he answered the questions correctly. Things that only Wing Angel would know, and they knew Wing Angel. But the thing is that what you run into with people on the internet, you run into with people in life and things like that, is that they're viewing their everything about their existence is from their camera's point of view, their body, their two eyes. And that's how they look at it. And they're looking at everything from the viewpoint of symbols. And they are a symbol, and their symbol says that their experience is this, and that all these things represent X, Y, and Z. But the thing is that when you audit somebody, it's a little trippy for people because maybe they catch a glimpse from their point of view at the time that their hand is masculine, or they catch a glimpse of themselves on something metallic or in a mirror, and they know it's them. They're looking at themselves, but they're driving a Mercedes instead of a Lexus, or something like that. It's when I use that as an analog to their body, it's not the same thing, and you have to get people outside of that viewpoint of the physical universe. You not only have to get them out of their head, you have to get them out of the viewpoint of symbols in general, whether it's their body or if it's male or female. I mean, it blows my mind how many people think about women in a different way who are men who are Scientologists, and women Scientologists who think of men in a different way, when the fact of the matter is we're all Thetans. We're just driving a different car. So, in the Wing Angel situation, it was that he was in a 5-year-old body, and he walks up the steps, and he speaks perfectly good English. And from the account that I had heard of somebody who was there, he even sort of talked like he did last lifetime, even though he was 5 years old. So he still had the valence to a certain degree. They asked him a few questions, and he was auditing the next day. Auditing.
Was he auditing someone else, or was he in session?
Yes.
No, what was that? So he was auditing someone else?
Yeah, he was auditing someone else.
What
he wanted
the
to search.
hell?
Yeah. This is Scientology.
Wow.
This is what real Scientology can do.
The proper old-timer one, not like the whole corporate church one from the 90s, yeah.
Right. The non-perverted version.
Jesus, it's so deep. It's so deep. I remember when I spoke to, I saw some guy, and he was about my age, but he had the valence of an old Englishman, and it was really interesting. And then I found out that he was getting into Freemasonry, and I was just like, I bet you he was like in 1930 or whatever, some old Englishman that was a Freemason, and he has no idea about his past life, but he still has the beingness, and so because it's very odd for a 22-year-old to like walk into a Freemasonry center and stuff like that, and so he just obviously was just gravitated towards it because he was like, I remember or whatever. But it was just like I was looking at him thinking, this the way he was acting. I was just like, what is this? I'm not. It's just funny. It's just like it's so evidence for past life.
Yeah. Well, like LRH says, the one way to get somebody when they're about to drop the body so that they don't go to what he refers to as the between lives areas, you get them to go to some place that they really like, someplace they really want to be. And they go there instead of going to the mix master machine and throwing everything back up so that they come back down and they don't know who they are, and then you have to straighten them out with the lower bridge and all of that stuff. That's what you need to do when somebody's getting ready to drop the body, is tell them to go to some place that they really like, and they'll go there instead, and kind of make it a command for them, and then they don't end up running into this last lifetime amnesia thing, and they'll even carry along their earlier valence. I've seen it several times.
So this is because I heard there was something like when a Sire is passing away, you get advice from the CS or whatever on what to do. Is this basically what the CS would say to do? Yeah,
that's the R factor.
That's the assist or something? Is it called an assist? Past like dropping
it's
the body
really
assist?
It's just an R factor that this is what you need to do. Is you need to go to maybe it was a state park that they liked or something like that because of the color of the leaves in the fall, or a place that really made them happy, that they were very fond of or something, because that's what you're trying to do, is you're trying to short circuit the command to return to one of the
implant
stations.
Places.
Yeah, that basically scrambles you up and then throws you back down here, and here you are. So that's big.
It's so deep. When you were talking about, when we were going into the whole Mandela effect thing, my mind was kind of exploding because I was just like, like all these things I want to say. And it was just like, it's just so funny. So what is that what all sires should do? Like speak to a good CS when they're getting old?
Well, I mean, if you just understand the concept, you don't even need to speak to a CS, because good CSs are hard to come by outside of the church.
Well, where's the policy on this?
It was in a lecture, I believe, on the briefing course that LRH talks about it. I don't remember what the number of it was or anything, but it was just sort of an off-the-cuff thing, because the LRH did a lot of that sort of thing on the briefing course lectures, especially. That you're just trying to put something in front of the command that says return back to home base and get put in the spinner, basically. So that's all you're trying to do.
So the Satan goes to a location that they admire, and then do they just go to a hospital or something to pick up a new baby body, or what?
Yeah, you kind of short circuit the between lives area, and then you can go pick up another body. I mean, from an OT perspective, do you really want to pick up another body? And if you do, choose wisely, because that choice sets off a series of unfortunate events or a series of fortunate events. Because not shortly after, you tend to start taking on other valences, unless you're in really, really good shape and you can hold everything together, and that's tough to do for 5, 6, 7, 8 years until you can really gather your wits. That's 7, 8 years is a long time.
And so you mean like 8 years of like growing up as a little kid?
Yeah, because as a little kid, you're not at cause at all. You're so much at effect. You tend to take on agreement and viewpoints and beliefs, and then you take on the valence that's the weaker valence, because it gets the most attention, and down the slippery slope you go, and before you need it,
there's so many things that okay. Yeah. Can I say something? So what are you planning on doing when you get old?
Well, I'm kind of sitting on the fence on the whole thing right now. Everything is relative. That's one of my favorite expressions, because my viewpoint now at 49 might be entirely different than my viewpoint at 79 or 69 or 59 or whatever, depending upon what I've caused myself to experience or not experience. If I were to say what I was going to do now, I'd probably sit things out for a little while, and just kind of wait and see what happens, and see if I can find some of my old friends and give it one hell of a try to try and get off of the planet. Though I don't know I would succeed, because it's a prison planet.
Oh man! So, do you think you could do more help in spirit form? Because I'm just wondering if LIH is in spirit form, because I've heard of that sort of rumor.
in all fairness, I can't say one way or the other if I would be of more use or not, because I couldn't really say what the abilities would be without a body. I would think they would be a lot better, because the body is sort of like a crappy insulator to Thetan's abilities. It really dumbs down an OT's perception and everything like that, because it's interference for the Thetan. So it might be a lot better. I don't know. I really couldn't say. I could only hypothesize, to be fair.
Where do you think LRH is?
I think he's off playing a far different game.
So do you think he's moved on, or do you think he's handling problems that are far away that have been coming to Earth, affecting Earth?
I would have to say that I think that for as much as he did, and LRH's solution to being and going OT was writing up his hats. And of anybody I know on this planet, he would be the number one guy that I would say did the best job of writing up his hats. Because when you write up your hat, you're basically doing power change. And so you can kind of, as is that whole physical universe thing and all of the symbols that go along with it, all of the significances, all of the charge and everything else, I don't know of anybody else that's come anywhere remotely, capitalized, parentheses, caps, 36-point font, better than LRH on that stuff. So I think he's done his part greater than anybody else has done on this line. And he might be helping things from a different angle, but playing a game that's, different, that's more aesthetic. I mean, he was an artist in many forms, and my perception of it is that that's what's going on, is that he's just playing a different game from a different angle. I don't for us to sit and think, well, when's he going to come back and fix this mess? I think that's an extremely and incredibly irresponsible viewpoint for any Scientologist to take, because it's not his job, it's our job.
I know, but here's the problem, though. Like, we get enlightened and all that sort of stuff, and then if we just keep on dropping the body and then effing off, then it's just like the Earth is just going to continue being a mess, because Ray Robles, I heard him mention that he's not planning on coming back, and it's like, oh, no, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think that perspective is good, and I know that as far as lineage goes, it wasn't just drop the body, pick up another one. Live that life, drop the body, pick up another one. Reach and withdraw is a really, really good process, both on the physical universe and the theta universe. And to reach and withdraw when you drop the body and kind of get exterior to things, especially if you've gotten a lot of auditing, I think that you would do good to kind of sit on the sidelines and try and play with those abilities and everything without a body, and you might find that you might be a lot more effective without a body, or you might find that you could be more effective with a body when you knew what those abilities were without the interference of the physical universe and the body getting in the way. That's my current viewpoint.
Yeah. Wow. So do you think that it's possible for someone to drop the body and reincarnate and come back in like 1940?
Well, I guess it depends on what your awareness and what your perceptions are. My awareness and perception is that we're kind of on a loop, and I think that it has a lot to explain for what people describe as deja vu, like we talked about in the last podcast. Unfortunately, I think that self-determinism is a key thing, but I also think that we're on a little bit of a loop as far as the physical universe goes, and this is talked about, and I thought this, and so did my wife, we've talked about it too, Carrie and I, that we're a little bit on a loop where we're kind of running through the same time track history at least once or maybe more over and over for some reason. And you start to find out about a lot of this data on the CBR bridge round about the level of the Phoenix.
Well, just what time period are you talking about? Are you talking about the 20th century or what?
Well, I couldn't say. I don't know that it would be linear. It could be completely random. Who's to say, and I'm just saying this as a hypothesis, who's to say after you finish OT umpty ump, whatever number, that you've changed the woof and the warp of the track for you, and so you're going to come back in 1863 or 1492 or whatever, or 2196 or something like that. It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, the further I go up the bridge, the less things surprise me as to what potential outcomes there are. And it's one hell of a game, that's for sure. It definitely keeps it interesting.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like, do you know what I had happen to me recently? I woke up in the morning and I managed to score the original copies of the Mission Earth books, and I got the books on a bookshelf, and I woke up in the morning and the first volume of Mission Earth was half pulled out of the bookshelf, quite noticeably, like quite obvious, like something is leaving a message for me, like, as in saying, read this thing, because I know Mission Earth has got so much truth about the world that Hubbard put into these fiction books, and I listened to the audio book for it, which was 30 hours long, and it cut out. I thought it was great, but it was a really condensed form. Like, it's actually much, much longer with heaps more information, and it's something that I've always wanted to get into reading, and it's like something was sending me a message like, hey, you've got to read Mission Earth. And it's like, and I've had other moments as well where it's like I've woken up in the morning and it seems like a ghost has moved something, like it's trying to send me a message because there was like a meaning behind it. And it's like, I know ghosts exist. I mean, we know that Thetans exist outside of the body, but it's just like, it's so deep, unless you've had these odd experiences, you just don't believe in this sort of stuff,
Yeah, well, I mean, the world that we live in is full of suppress and invalidate and not is. I mean, that's what it consists of, that anything that doesn't conform to the norm of our handlers is suppressed, invalidated, and not is, to the point to where, well, with the advent of the internet, they can pretty much rewrite history whenever they want, as long as, the internet is in existence and electrons still move through wires. Anything is possible. I think that that's part of the reason why the internet has been allowed to expand and become so pervasive, is that they can use it as a tool to change anything they want to, because if it's not on the internet, like LRH says in the Knot series, the hardest thing to spot is a missingness.
Yep. And what do you think about some of these things? Because I heard a story about LRH flipping open a book to a certain page that was about not having to do sec checks when you're on OT7 or something like that, some story like that. Like some people who claim to be sort of in communication with LRH or something like that. Have you heard of these stories?
Well, as far as the opening a book and, the reference that you're looking for just being right in front of you, I've had that happen.
No, but apparently, I know, yeah, I've had it happen as well. It's like it's maybe an OT ability or something, but like as in it happened a few times, like a ghost was there forcing the book to go to this certain page to wake this person up, because like this person was supposed to, be fighting.
I think that's very, very likely and very possible. Given the parameters with which, again, the body, a symbol that you identify with, and its ability to perceive, and then the narrow bandwidth of which you can actually see visible light, the things that you can perceive with the 52 perceptions that LRH delineates in the technical volumes. It's an extremely, extremely narrow band. And when you look at what the actual light spectrum is, Another example would be the infrared spectrum. They used to use infrared on helicopters and jets in the military. The U.S. military did. And they had to stop using infrared because it was freaking out the pilots so much of the things that they were seeing in the infrared spectrum that they couldn't see themselves with their own naked eye. So they switched over to infragreen.
What were they seeing in infrared?
God only knows. Whatever it wasn't pretty.
Do you reckon they were seeing entities or some shit like that?
Yeah, stuff that they were seeing when they were flying that they could see with infrared that they could not see with the naked eye was so interpolating to them that they had to switch to a safer part of the spectrum, which we now know as, infragreen, which is the day for, or not day for night, but for the, no light situations, like when you're using a camera that can see in the dark and everything, it's using a green part of the spectrum instead of a red part of the spectrum. So it wouldn't surprise me one bit, that if while you're doing this podcast, there's somebody standing over your shoulder. But I mean, to use the term standing has to be an extremely loose expression because, beings don't have to stand. Only bodies stand. And this is one of the things that people that don't understand Scientology can't think outside of the box with, because they represent everything from the viewpoint of a being in a body, a marionette. And so if their marionette cannot experience this, or they can't explain it from the viewpoint of a marionette's viewpoint, then it doesn't exist. That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever experienced as a Scientologist or as an OT, because they're only looking at it through a narrow band of experience.
So a marionette's a puppet, just to clear that up for people, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you heard these things about in the old days, like the 50s and that, where people could get their body to float? Have you heard about this?
I've heard about that. I've also seen Indian swamis who could do that sort of a thing.
Really? So you've seen it with your own eyes?
Well, I've seen videos of it that didn't appear to be doctored, from the 30s forward, of these swamis who could levitate things. But see, this is what I'm talking about. Is the thing is like Ellerate says, you don't want to go knocking hats off at a distance as an OT. Now, I can tell you that I cannot knock hats off at a distance as an OT right now.
But that's also because you haven't spent time drilling it. I'm sure you could do it once you drill it.
Well, whether I can or I can't, I'm not worried about that. I'm sure that I probably could if I wanted to. I mean, there's lots of other interesting things that I can do. But see, the thing is, when you're dealing with people, with critics of Scientology, their viewpoint is well, what can you do to prove to me, Gandalf, that you're OT? See, the thing is they're already looking at it from the viewpoint of parlor tricks, that sort of a thing. Can you float off the ground, so on and so forth? Because they're not aware of the fact that there is another universe that they're a part of, which is really, really unfortunate. They don't know that they're part of the Theta universe, and that the Theta universe doesn't have any space or time. You can communicate with somebody in another galaxy if you want to, and you have ARC for them, and get in calm with them and have a conversation with them telepathically. Or 10 galaxies away, on the other side of the physical universe, or in another universe. That beats knocking hats off at a distance or making a rock float exponentially, because you're transiting time and distance, because there is no such thing. We're spirits in the material world. And that's what they need to understand. They're criticizing something that they have no concept of. And that's the funniest thing about the critics of Scientology, is they don't even understand what it is that they're criticizing, because they know nothing of it.
I know, it's ridiculous. It's like they're bagging a movie that they haven't seen, and they've just all they've seen is the review, and it's like you can't just go by what you've read on from reviews. So with the past life thing, how do you get certainty on who you are in a past life? Like I don't know what you're willing to talk about with your past life, but like how do you become aware of what you were doing in your last lifetime?
Okay. Well, let's do a drill. Okay.
Yeah.
It may or may not work. Let's do a test first. Okay. I want you to think of one of the major pleasure moments that you had when you were a kid, and let me know what it was, what the significance was. Where did this take place? What was the significance of the event?
Well, I think it could be. I just thought of like playing in a tree and pretending like it was a rocket ship.
Okay, good. Was there anybody else around?
Yeah.
Okay, who was around with you?
My older sister and my dad.
Okay, good. How high up off the ground were you? Probably
3 meters.
Okay, good. Where was the sun at this point in time? Behind you, in front of you?
It was, I think it was to the north.
Okay, so were you facing north?
Oh, well, now I got the instant answer of actually to the northeast, but now I'm thinking, I'm being a bit logical. I'm thinking it's probably more in the afternoons. It was probably northwest.
Okay, let's bypass the logical. I want you to tell me what your knowingness tells you. Where was it?
I'll have to go by the instant answer. The northeast, more northeasterly direction.
Okay, good. That's what we're looking for, is the instant answer. Okay. All right. So where do you see yourself from in the tree?
Sort of from maybe a meter above, like looking at it. Bit of a maybe 3 meters. Maybe like a film shot from like 3 meters or something.
Okay, so you see the back of your head or to the side?
Sort of the top of my head, almost sort of top side of my head.
Top side. Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, so we're doing good so far. All right, what year were you born?
89.
1989. Okay. All right, so where were you? And I want your instant answer only. Do not invalidate any answer that comes out, okay? Because I'm right there in the room with you right now, about 1 foot in front of your face. Okay.
Well, hold on. Now I want to test you out and see if you can see what I'm doing. Then.
Well, I'm just doing this to let you know that I'm in the room with you, and I'm going to intend you to get the answer that we're looking for. Okay. So
by the way, if anyone's listening to this and thinking this is really weird, I had a conversation with a friend once who almost had sex with a girl by this spiritual way of like one person was in America and one was in Australia, but somehow they came together in spirit form and had sex or something. Mm. I'm not joking, like literally, like I don't know, it was really weird, like they felt each other's energy or something, and it's probably not right for me to talk about the specifics, but
probably not.
but they could, but basically he could feel her or she could feel him in spirit form or something, and it's just like, whoa.
Right. Well, we're going to go for something a little more.
Sorry, I've got a more PR. I've got a more PR answer to that. I got a more appropriate example. I knew someone who was like a special psychic and stuff, and he had this ability to like astral walk or exteriorize, and he went into someone's house to look for their keys or whatever. He went in like as a ghost, like in spirit form, to look for the keys. And the other person perceived a ghost in their house and then told him the next day, hey, I think my house is haunted. He was like, no, that was me. I was looking for the keys in your house because they had lost their keys. Long story, but this shit's real. Anyway.
Yeah. All right, so I'm about a foot and a half in front of you.
Okay.
All right, I want you to tell me what you were doing in early June of 1963. What's your answer? What do you see?
Well, I thought of St. Hill, but yeah, that was, I don't know.
Okay, well, so what did you see? Tell me, I was there. Tell me what you saw.
I saw, like...
What
I saw
What are the
like
buildings?
almost like a sort of not in like the main building of Saint Hill, but like as in the I feel like it's like groundskeeper building, or like, you know, just some sort of like small like minor building that's like a nothing building that's like
Uh-huh.
near, I guess, the manor. Like I think it's
Oh,
where maybe cars drive past.
okay. All right. So were you in that building at the time?
I think maybe. I think I was, yeah, maybe doing paperwork in that building or something.
Okay. Good. What color was your hair?
I got I got an instant answer of like yellow, like straw.
Uh-huh.
Straw yellow.
So kind of a you were a towhead, a blonde, like you are now.
No, but the flash answer was like what's the straw color? I don't think what's straw color? Like I don't know, I guess wheat color, something like
Okay.
that.
Good. Were you on course at St. Hill?
Um uh well, not when I was doing that paperwork stuff.
Right, but you were on course at St. Hill. That's why you were there, right?
I don't know, but this is getting real funky here. I just have to go a flash answer.
Well, I'm asking you, and you're giving me the answers because your original question is, what about this past life thing? And my point being is that you can intend anybody down the track, especially as an OT, because when you have a comm cycle with someone, and like this is not an auditing session, we're just doing straight recall on something. So it's not aberrative or anything like that. I'm just trying to give you a reality that when you're working with somebody that can be sort of your escort as an OT to go down the track, it's a lot easier, and then you can answer your own question. That's a past life. If I were to say, what was the temperature at the time in that building while you were there, what would you say? What would your snap answer be?
15 degrees. That's not Fahrenheit, by the way. Celsius.
Yeah, Celsius. Well, it was in the summer, so was it fairly early morning?
Yeah, well, if it was in the summer, then yes. Why are you saying summer? Are you using your perceptions?
Well, I can kind of pick up some of the things that you're perceiving.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. And did you look over your right shoulder to see what cars were coming down the road towards you?
Yeah, because towards the over my in the right direction is where the manor is, and where I think the road is between the building I'm in and the manor.
All right. So there's your answer. That's past life. I mean, you're doing something which is really easy to do. It's kind of like saying, well, what did you have for breakfast yesterday? Well, I had a bowl of cereal and some 2% milk with it or something. It's no different than that. It's just getting somebody to not invalidate or suppress or not is those particular things and just go towards a benign incident of existence that they were in last life or the life prior, whatever the situation is. So it's not hard, especially if you've had any auditing at all. That helps quite a bit and you're in good shape. But you can pretty much do it with anybody unless they're in really rough shape. So I hope
It's
that answers your
interesting. I think it's interesting because it's a bit odd as well that I would walk into Scientology as opposed to being born into it or anything,
Yeah.
and sort of latch onto it. The only thing that makes me think a little bit concerned is the fact that a lot of people, regardless of whether or not they were sires in their past life, they like it and they get into it heavily. There's something about Scientology where you get like hooked on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, if it's true for the person and they have experienced gains from it, then they're going to be willing to do more of it. And it's sort of a, yeah, I'll take some more of that, please, type of a thing. And the reason why you don't see as many Scientologists coming back around from say, the 90s or things like that, is because it's not so much Scientology anymore. It's something else.
So that's why you're saying a lot of these people seem to be like old timers from St. Hill or whatever, because that was when it was the tech was better and people wanted to be around, as opposed to the 90s in some crappy org with, Dave Miscavige running it. Yeah.
Yeah, because the Thetan knows. I mean, that's the most important thing, and that's how I was able to demonstrate that to you just now, is because the Thetan knows we're just trying to bypass all of the other crap that's saying, no, this isn't true. No, this is made up, that sort of a thing, and this sort of thing doesn't happen. I mean, that's how the society is rigged, is they don't want you to know you're a spiritual being. They don't want you to know that you know all and see all. You just have to put your feelers out there to perceive it, because then you're a dangerous being to them, and they can't put you in a cage. That's what it all comes down to. So that's why I demonstrated that to you. So yeah, you're a past lifer.
I remember when I first read Dianetics or whatever, and yeah, it was like I was reading things and I was like, it was like, stuff that I felt like I sort of already knew before. And at the time I thought, that Hubbard had just come to similar conclusions that I had come to, but it could just be that I've already been exposed to this book before, you know what I mean? But it was things like the whole idea that life was a game. I always had the idea that it was like a game of Monopoly, which is just very similar to life as a game, the same sort of thing.
Right.
And then the whole idea... Yeah, but it very much ring true to me, you know what I mean? And that's why I was kind of like, I don't know, it's just when people hate Scientology and then knock it and I leave it, and just like, how can you do that to such a book as Dianetics? It's got some groundbreaking information in it, and it's really good information. How can you just rant and attack the whole subject when it's just like, whoa, this book's great, you know what I mean? Anyway, with your past life though, did you tap into, like, are you willing to talk about who you were?
Well, I mean, I can tell you what the surrounding situation was.
Because I mean, I would think that would be really interesting,
Well, I was a trust fund kid. I had a lot of money. It was old English money. I was British. And my father was still around, and he didn't like the fact that I was in Scientology, because at that time, the old school, old money British families very much poo-pooed Scientology. Scientology was receiving the sort of bad press in England at the time.
Yeah, and in Australia. I mean, yeah. Scientologists have been bullied for a long time. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, so I was able to travel around and go to many of the ACCs and things like that in the 50s freely, because I had the money to do so, and a friend of mine had told me about it and given me the Dianetics book, and I was hooked, and I started going to the advanced clinical course lectures, and the Scientology that was being done then in Dianetics was what would later, bits and pieces of it, would become the OT level. So there were a lot of really able, really intelligent, really theta, for people that aren't Scientologists, people that were real flowy and open and helpful. And, it wasn't like a hippie movement or anything. These were really sharp individuals who saw that this technology worked and that this guy was on to something.
Oh, hold on. By the way, but can I mention something as well? I've worked something out big with that. Okay. I think what happened with the generation of people born like maybe post 1955, there was more TV, there was more drugs and all this sorts of stuff, and they've been heavily affected by corporations and this bad lifestyle. And I feel like people who were born a part of my grandparents' past generation, like in the 1930s and the 20s and stuff, they they were a lot more able and switched on, and they weren't addicted to sex or drugs or eating Cheezos and all this sort of stuff. Anyway, go on. Sorry.
Right.
Sorry, but
Yeah,
there's actually a point, though. There's actually a point where you can notice a sudden shift in society, and I think it was started with people born from maybe 55 onwards or something. There's an actual shift where you can see the degradation, and this is why LRH was going crazy with his Sea Org in the 60s, because he was going, look at these statistics, this society is going wild, it's going freaking crazy, this is off the charts, and he was really worried, you know, and now I can see all the evidence for it, you know.
Right. Well, with the advent of TV, I think that was sort of the beginning of the end.
Yeah. And TV and drugs came at the same time.
Yeah, and then you start getting into the pot culture in the early '60s, the late '50s, reefer madness. I mean, that went back all the way to the '30s, but you really started seeing the degradation being kicked in by numerous different influences, and I think it was an effort in concert. And that was one of the things that we were seeing towards the late 50s, is that things were changing rapidly, and that something really needed to be done about it.
Yeah, and you got people like Alex Jones, who says that some of these top SPs, these top evil people, were pushing are pushing marijuana and trying to make it more of a stronger, potent stuff. Like, I think he was talking about Kissinger or something, or George Soros or whatever. Like, he said something like he wanted to try marijuana and see how much stronger Thingo had made it or something. It's just so deep. It's just like, wow, yeah, and it makes sense. Like, things don't just happen, you know. These things are like specifically pushed onto people and stuff.
Right. Well, I mean, you can't control a critical thinking nation because they won't fall for your lies. And the thing is that if you get them hooked on drugs, you get them watching TV that has subliminal messaging in it, and radio that has subliminal messaging in it, and is pushing this counterculture of degradation, and is being purveyed to the lowest of the lowest common denominator, it's going to, over decades, it's going to make a really big dent in their willingness to fight back. And that's exactly, they've gotten exactly what they wanted. In short.
I think it's probably taking longer than what they thought, but like, I mean, if you look at all the statistics, you can see they've totally had a massive change. So
So to
hold on. So with the TV thing, it's not only getting people to buy these products and stuff, like with the ads and all this sorts of things, and then like encouraging sex by having a sexy woman and shit in the ad or whatever. There's also the actual propaganda of the news, which can just be absolute lies. But then also, if TV even was pure and had nice quality art shows, like, nice quality things, enjoyable sitcoms and stuff, even that in itself is bad because it's training a person to be a spectator in life. So if they're sitting down at the TV from age 4 onwards as a kid, they're getting trained into just being a spectator, you know what I mean? And not a doer, just a watcher, you know? Be effect. Be effect.
Yeah, it's all flow through others to others.
Yeah.
Yeah. And see, that was the thing is, LRH saw this and he tried to develop these undercuts to society in order to pull people out of the muck, but the society was going down faster than undercuts could be created and tested and all of that stuff. And the last undercut was Key to Life and LOC. So, to return to the original question, what was I doing last lifetime? I was working in Scientology, up until almost literally till the very end. I was one of the guinea pigs on the original OT2 course. And he had gotten it all plotted out, and the dates were wrong on the incidents, and it plowed me under, and that was that. And then I picked up another body in East Africa about 7-8 months later.
Hold on a second. Did you just drop another big bomb?
No, I was
like,
born
did you say no? But as in, like the whole OT. Are you saying you died on the OT levels?
Yeah, I died on OT2 before LRH had figured out that the dates were incorrect on the materials, because the materials were incorrectly dated on the whole track in order to screw you up so that you couldn't figure it out. And LRH at the time hadn't figured it out yet. And I was one of the early adopters, guinea pigs, if you will, to try it out. And in so doing, it had some less than fabulous effects on the body, and I ended up dropping the body and then picked up another body a few months later, not far from the Mediterranean in East Africa.
So you're one of the like when LH in Ron's Journal 67 talks about how hardcore I guess the OT3 material is or whatever, like, you know, for PR reasons, he didn't mention that actually some people had died from some of this research.
Well, I didn't even get to OT3. I was on OT2 when I dropped the body.
Yeah, but in Ron's Journal, I think he's talking about just that sort of that area. I guess he's talking about those sorts of things, that high-level sort of data and OT stuff.
Yeah, it's one of those. I mean, it's one of those things that until you actually do it, you're going to have reservations about it. But if you've actually made it to the point to where you should be doing the level, and you do the level the way he says to do it, you will find that that area is so severely and heavily charged, it's not even funny.
Okay, so what about, you're saying some of these people who are doing it in the church, because they're doing it incorrectly and they're getting squirrel tech and stuff, and they're not, like, they're doing it so wrong, so they're not even actually properly accessing this part of their case.
No, they're not actually. I mean, first of all, no auditing can occur under PTSness, okay? Because any gains that the person has, they're gonna go away. All right. So anybody listening to this down the road from when we recorded this, from 14 October 2017, Planet Earth. What you're dealing with in Scientology right now, modern day in the Church of Scientology, is you're dealing with a PTSness. You're going to be roller coastering because whether you like it or not, you're part of a suppressive organization, and you're PTS to them. They're suppressing you. They're altering the data. And if you're on the OT levels, you are at risk, period, because they are suppressive. And it's not gonna help you. You need to get away from that, and you need to do the OT levels as they were meant to be done, unencumbered by PTSness. And there are many people in the field that can help you with that standardly.
Okay, and LRH did fix up the tech so that people don't die when they're doing it, right?
Yeah. I mean, he eventually figured out that the dates that were in these particular incidents on OT2 were the wrong dates, because this all goes back to the axioms in Scientology that to get a proper isness, you have to have the proper time, place, form, and event. So for anything to persist, there's a lie behind it. So the guys that developed these implants back on the track that you're handling on OT2, they wrong dated them so that it would screw you up. And LRH didn't catch it at first, and then eventually he did because he's a really smart guy.
Now, this isn't Incident 1. Incident 1 is part of OT3, right?
Right.
And what's the clearing course? That's nothing to do with Incident 1 or Incident 2? Or it sort of is, but it's a whole different thing?
It sort of is,
but it's not.
By extension. But OT2 and the clearing course, a lot of the materials are the same materials.
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, let's clear this up. So clearing course, OT1, OT2, OT3, they're all sort of the same thing, but just broken into different parts. Is that right? Yeah,
they're components from the same situation. That would be the safest way to put it.
Yeah, because everyone assigns this thing to sort of OT, this implant to OT3 or whatever all the time, but it's all sort of one big thing, really.
Yeah. A lot of the stuff that was used in the OT3 materials in the actual incident that was laid in on people was data that had been found and was used earlier on the track, and so that data was plowed in on people from an earlier. So it's basically like taking something from the Greeks and the Romans used it. That's the best way to describe it as an analogy.
So is it like the incident that occurred in OT3, or sorry, this incident 2 or whatever, is so deep that you need to do it in it's broken into like 3 OT levels, sort of. You need to approach it from different ways and crack it open, and it's just like, you can't just do it in OT3. It's almost got the clearing course in there and it's all that. It's that wild.
Yeah, clearing course is done if the person doesn't go clear on new aerodynamics, modern day, or has other troubles, which we won't go into. But I mean, it's all of the data is a package of information from 3 to 1. Not so much. 1 is sort of a welcome to the OT levels type of a thing. The original 1, which is what people should do, not what the church passes off as OT1, because it doesn't. It has no resemblance to LRH's handwritten OT1. So OT2, OT3. In the clearing course are all the data is related, either closely or distantly based off of other factors, but they're all part and parcel to the same incidents in one way or another.
Yeah. Okay. And just, I got a quick question. I want you to, like, one word answer this. Do you think with GAT2 they're squirreling the text so that people are doing their grades faster and achieving like the state of clear faster, but they're not really properly achieving those things?
I would say absolutely.
Really? Yeah, because that's what my observation has noticed as well. Like, apparently it just seems like they're like a Melbourne org has sort of made apparently like 50 clears this year, which is really unusual. Like back in 2011, it was like 2 people, right? They made 50 clears this year, and I heard it's a lot of the staff, which sounds pretty good because the staff deserve it and stuff. But the org's no more bigger than usual. See, I would have thought, well, that means they must be booming like there's no tomorrow to have 50 clears made this year, but they're not. So it's like, I think they're quicking people to this state of clear.
Here's my think on it, is that he's bled every possible turnip dry. Every possible turnip he can possibly come up with on the OT levels. And so he's realized that he needs to plant seeds somehow, some way, to get other people to become turnips so that he can do the same thing to them. Now, whether they can and they've actually made it or not doesn't matter to him, because that's not the point. The point
he's
is,
an admin guy, yeah.
Yeah, he's looking at it from the viewpoint of the almighty dollar, because he is such a solid citizen. That's the only thing he can understand, okay, is money, messed, symbology of importance by vis-a-vis fiat currency, that sort of a thing.
Yeah, okay.
So he's pushing people up the bridge without them actually making it, quickying them, and he's trying to get more people up there so that he has new OTs that he can bleed dry.
Okay,
that's
okay.
my
But have you come across people who have actually been announced GAT2 clear but aren't clear?
Not a one. I haven't met anybody that's a GAT2 clear. So
Okay.
I haven't run across any of those people yet. They either haven't come out of the church, or they haven't contacted me or any of the people that I know that do the same thing.
Okay.
So that might be something we see down the road, but I think it's a little early for that.
All right, but you like me, as in the evidence seems to be indicating that they've quickied things.
Yeah, I mean that's his only solution. I mean that's what he's done with everything else.
Yeah.
So why would he change midstream?
So when you handle some of this high level material incorrectly, like I assume you did in your past life or whatever, because the tech wasn't perfected, how does it kill someone?
Well, it can affect the body. It can affect, the body can develop difficulties, especially on the lower end of the bridge, because your awareness isn't such that you can perceive what's going on, because you're still kind of looking at things from the viewpoint of being the body to a degree. And you could get any number of hundreds of problems because this stuff has been keyed in. That's what it was made for. I mean, they knew that people were going to be in bodies still at the point that they developed these implants, because they had been around a lot longer than that beforehand when these implants were made.
Hey, and can I say something as well? I mean, this might sound wild, but this is basically just advanced versions of mind control technology, which apparently our governments sort of have these days. Like, as in with this whole MK Ultra thing and stuff, and where they take people and they make them into a mind control assassin and stuff, and they give them drugs and they brainwash them, and we've just got the lower tech. I mean, there's much deeper, bigger versions, isn't there?
Yeah. Well, the thing is that's why what happened to Scientology happened, is because Scientology actually worked at the time that this stuff was taken out of the church in the early 70s by, a couple of CIA operatives and everything like that. And I think, bandying about the MK Ultra program and all of that stuff, that's old news. These guys have taken that data from the early 70s and superseded, from a black ops viewpoint, Scientology by leaps and bounds now.
Well, so what do you think that the mind control technology they've got going now that they might be using on someone?
Well, I mean, those particular things, as far as pain, drug, and hypnosis, or what LRH would call PDHing, those things are still in use. I'm not saying that they're not formidable weapons against the American public or Scientology or any entity that they want to use them against. They are. But as far as the technology that they got from Scientology and LRH's researches, I think are almost a dead certainty that they have taken these things and are light years.
All right, hold on a second. Sorry. Yes, what do you want? All right, let's continue. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's all right. These things happen when we start talking about things like this.
No way. No way. Are you being serious? Are you being a joke?
I'm being dead serious. I'm not joking.
Because I've noticed that whenever, because you got like the alphabet agencies or whatever that are like monitoring people and stuff, and if they go on to sensitive topics, then they press like an interference button and it stuffs up like the radio show, or it cuts people's internet. I mean, I know for sure that is what they do totally. Like the same as, imagine OSA might be doing, or they definitely want to have that technology to do it. But this is something else you're mentioning.
It's much more subtle, because it isn't something that you can go, aha! It's something that, well, somebody comes in and interrupts you while you're talking about something that could be shared with thousands of people, and it looks just innocent. But the thing is that the people that are driving the people that are doing it to you, they know what they're doing.
Do you really believe that?
Yes.
So what were we exactly talking? We were talking about mind control technology, right?
Yeah, we were talking about MK Ultra and how that had been superseded by a lot higher capability type programs that they use. For example, let me give you a prime example. Dr. Xavier in the X-Men, right?
No.
The Marvel Comics.
No, I haven't read it.
You haven't seen the movies? Okay.
No.
Well, Dr. Xavier, he runs a school for mutants, okay? And he has telepathic abilities where gets on a machine and he can see every mutant in the world, and he can communicate with them and perceive them.
Yeah.
Well, you're dealing with programs like that they've taken people who, for lack of a better expression, are black OTs. And they have these abilities, and they can go find any particular person they need to find just based off of a shred of information, and then they can kind of flick the Phaeton finger on them to do something that they want them to do that might butterfly effect. For example, your relatives coming in and talking to you while we were talking about this very thing. That's just an example.
So they can sort of control bodies from a distance. Yeah.
Well, you're not controlling bodies from a distance. You're controlling Phaetons that control bodies who are unknowing participants in a much bigger game. That's the sort of thing that a person can do. Any OT can do it if they want to.
Yeah. Well, it's like psychic attacks, sort of.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying that it necessarily has to be nefarious, but what I am saying is that the potential is there, and LRH actually presents this potential to you on the original OT 4 through 7, more so 4 through 6, but the original OT levels that are no longer part of the Scientology bridge are those OT levels that present these OT abilities to you through LRH and his demonstration processes. That's why they were gotten rid of in Scientology, because they don't want people running around doing this unless they work for whichever nefarious agency wants to use them.
Wow, so deep. I mean, yeah, I've heard of psychic attacks like something like, because these abilities exist, and so the military or whatever uses them as a form of attacking someone or whatever in some way.
Well, yeah, the church uses them too.
Really? So you really think that?
No, I don't think that.
You know.
I know that.
All right, hold on a second. Can we have a break for like 2 minutes and then we'll continue? Let's continue. So you were saying that you know for sure that the church used psychic attacks.
Well, I think calling it a psychic attack really isn't a fair term.
Well, what word would be good then?
What we call it is black knots.
Okay, yeah, but for someone who doesn't know Scientology, a real simple, like a layman's term, I think psychic attack. A psychic.
Well, if you wanted to really go a layman, you could say they're putting a curse on someone. I mean, that would be the time tested, and that's the best way to describe it. It's sort of low order, but psychic is kind of a dirty word because it doesn't really encompass the entirety of OT. So maybe for other people it does. It doesn't for me. I kind of find it a lame term, but that's fine. I mean, it's just a label.
So how does one come to discover this? Because I mean, imagine people who aren't even Psi's, and if they listen to this, would just be like, "What the hell?" And they probably wouldn't have gotten this far into the interview anyway. But
right.
I mean, imagine there's probably some Psi's listening, thinking, "What the hell?" And how the hell does John think he knows this or something like that?
Well, see, that's the funny thing about the OT levels is that as you advance up the OT levels, your awareness, your perception, your knowingness increase. And you're not even going to be aware of certain things until you do OT level whatever. And you'll think, well, yeah, I know all there is to know. And then you do the next OT level and you're like, well, I didn't know anything then. Because it's all relative. Don't know what you don't know. And that's the brilliance of LRH's tech and David Mayo's help with LRH on the knots materials and things like that, because I will give credit where credit is due, even though that may be unpopular with some people.
Okay, now hold on a second. So you were saying with this information about the church using black knots, you haven't been told that by like an insider or something, as in you've gotten that from Case Gain and your OT abilities?
Yeah, I've looked into it, and many other people have become aware of it, either on their own auspices or been CS'd to look into that sort of a thing, because it is a factual form of interference for anybody who raises their head up and goes public or creates a problem or tries to free people, outside of the church, and is trying to push Scientology further beyond what they want to push it as.
Well, man, this is so deep. So, are you telling me that in the Office of Special Affairs, they might have a room with OTs sitting in there thinking things?
Well, I wouldn't say thinking things. They probably go in session and create problems. I mean, that's what I get from it, at least, and other people that I've talked to who have looked into it is that they're trying to add on case to a specific individual who is making waves that they don't want making waves, is probably the best way I could put it.
Wow. So, I mean, how would you recruit someone into the Office of Special Affairs to do such a post?
Well, if somebody were in a lower condition, let's say they were a flag public, and it was found out that there was something they were doing that was less than ideal, and then the church could kind of blackmail them and say, well, we'll take your spiritual eternity away if you don't do this lower condition. And what we want you to do to make up your liability condition is we want you to go in session, and we want you to find this Jonathan Burke guy. And what we want you to do is ... And so this OT7 does what they tell him to do. And this particular methodology just so happens works.
Wow.
And they can make life a little more difficult, but for anybody who's, especially somebody who's tech trained and isn't just a solo auditor, they're going to pick up on it pretty quick and go, something's not right in my universe. What is this? There was a blogger out of South Africa who had gotten out of the church, and they'd been writing a blog for, at least over a year. And they posted a blog about this particular phenomena, and their question was literally, is someone fucking with my case?
that was the title of the blog?
Well, this was what they were talking about in the blog. Yeah. So they went in session as a solo NOTS auditor, and they asked the question, is somebody fucking with my case? And they got a long fall blowdown, which is the largest read you can get on a regular Scientology meter. It's a very big read, which means there's a lot of charge there. And so they pulled it down and found out where this particular individual was. And they also handled any of the composite case components that you handle in NOTS, and dismantled the whole thing. But it was because they were blogging about the church in a negative light. And so they took it upon themselves to try and take them out. Now, the interesting thing is that particular blogger has not written one blog post since they brought this up.
Is that because are they still around, or what?
I could not tell you. I do not know. I just find it very date coincident.
So he posts some big groundbreaking thing and then he goes quiet.
Yeah.
Why aren't they doing this to Chris Shelton?
They could be doing it to anybody. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me one bit that not only do they do this sort of thing towards, people who are on NOTS, because it's a lot easier to do on people who aren't on NOTS, because they're not going to have a clue as to what's going on, because they don't understand the phenomenon.
Well, what would they be perceiving?
You could, for lack of a better expression, they could get people to think or do anything given enough time, to be perfectly honest.
So basically, you sort of keep on directing sort of an idea at them, and eventually they take on that idea as their own thoughts.
No. Well, it's not. There's a lot more to it than an idea. There's actually a lot more capability, power, force. I just can't get into the details on it because it's upper level stuff.
I know, but what if someone who isn't up to that level yet might be receiving an attack like this? So it would be good to give them some information so that they know what to look out for.
Well, if you're doing something outside of what you would normally do that doesn't make sense and isn't really rational, you might be being screwed with. I'd like to indicate that to anybody that finds themselves thinking things that they don't normally think, and they used to like Scientology, but they've been making waves, or maybe the church found out about them, or, they could even take individuals who have absolutely nothing to do with the church, green as a leaf on a tree, and put it in their heads. You're going to get into Scientology in the field, and you're going to create problems. They could do that too, and these people wouldn't have a clue. Wouldn't have a clue.
Okay, so, this is like, there's this thing where there's some guy called Corey Good who's apparently been abducted by aliens and was away for 40 years, and he came back to Earth and only 6 minutes had gone by, and he said, yeah, but for 40 years I was out in the stars or whatever, on Mars and stuff, and he has no evidence for it. And people in the UFO community reckon that he's just a victim of government mind control, and that because the government wants someone walking around saying absolutely outrageous things to discredit the whole people trying to expose the truth about UFOs.
Right, but his stories have changed over time too, which is very suspect.
Yeah, so
I'm familiar with the guy.
Yeah, so it's questionable what's going on. And also, I listened to the way how he argues back to defend himself, and that to me was outpointing, the way how he handled being accused of being a not genuine or something. But that's kind of, I don't know, it's just everything that's going on so deep. It's just like, what the hell? Okay, I mean, okay, so Black Knights, okay, so we covered that.
Yeah, to circle back.
We're talking about the government having psychic attacks. So you say that it's possible that the U.S. government has people I assume they wouldn't use actual Black Knots technology because they wouldn't know it, but they have a similar way to put curses on people or something, you reckon?
Well, all I can say is with the material that I'm familiar with, because this material is on the internet, okay, and it's been validated as the material that we have used, okay, so it's not something that I'm unfamiliar with or anything like that. I know that the Knots materials that I used on myself and that I was CS'd on and all of this and all of my bridge was the correct bridge. And what I'm saying is that if I got the correct bridge and I got these materials off of the internet, you better be damn sure that the NSA and the CIA have had this material for decades, okay? And they've taken this material and they are using it for their own means and purposes because they can. And they know it works. And that's why Scientology is in the state that it is in, the period paragraph.
I've noticed with some freedom fighters that you can sometimes notice they look under the weather. You know what I mean? They look like they've been, a bit heavy. Yeah, yet they've done a lot of spiritual stuff, and they should be a lot more, I guess, happy looking. Sometimes they look like they're worn out. And so, do you think that's because recently they've been getting a fair bit of psychic attack?
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Psychic attack, Black Knots, whatever you want to call it. And I'm not saying that there aren't other influences besides the things that I'm aware of, because I would be really, really naive to say that the only things that exist are the things that I know exist. And I know that's not the case. I know there are things I'm not aware of, and I'm consciously incompetent, if you will, and that I know that there are other bits of tech and data that are extant that have nothing to do with Scientology, and being that way at least kind of protects you a little bit, that you should keep an open mind at all times, and that there's far more going on than meets the eye, because the eye can only perceive a small portion of what's really going on. And that's why it's so important to be OT, because you at least have the ability to perceive things a lot better than you would have otherwise. And if that was all I got from the OT levels, I would be completely satisfied and not have any problem with it. But it is also a lot more than that. So that's why I always say, run up the bridge, don't walk.
It's so deep. So have you heard about this? Like, there's that Staring at Goats movie where the military experiments with trying to just stare at goats and kill the goats. Yeah. And this is just a psychic ability that really exists, that you really can do. And the military keeps these things secret. Like, they don't want people knowing they have UFO tech, like anti-gravity technology. They don't want people knowing about these psychic abilities and stuff. And so it really is believable that it's possible, but they have soldiers that are psychic soldiers that can do this shit.
Yeah. Yeah. And, if people don't want to believe that, that's fine. They cannot believe it at their own peril. The fact of the matter is that the inmates are running the asylum. That's long and the short of it.
Yeah. Yeah, because evil people are insane. It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just we've just got a higher percentage of our population that are actually full blown insane, and so they're doing crazy shit. And there's, anyway, I mean, when you take someone who's not that competent and they're you send them insane, then they just end up robbing from 7-Eleven and stealing cars. But if you take someone who's a really talented, let's say someone like LRH, who's bigger, more powerful, more abilities, and you send them insane, they end up doing the wildest shit. Like, they really traumatize. They end up just, like, becoming presidents and becoming heads of corporations and just doing outrageous, like the bad guys in James Bond movies. They end up doing these sort of epically bad things, and then they bring us all down with them.
Yeah, well, there's something to be said for, it's not a good movie if there aren't explosions in it. Or, the underlying theme of every video game is battle or war or, killing something instead of creating. I mean, the most popular video games aren't the ones that are creative. They're the ones that have to do with killing and war and all of that stuff. And all that stuff is covered on the early OT levels. And people on this planet are just dramatizing it, and they're just on a series of now I'm supposed to, like LRH says, well, now I'm supposed to do this, and now I'm supposed to do that. And that's all it is. And they're just reliving these same type of lives over and over and over and over, because they're unwilling participants in a game that they're unaware of. And that pretty much sums it up.
There's odd things going on with the people here on Earth, and I think there is an answer to it in the OT3 incident, but odd things like people being obsessed with black leather, and like just you know what I mean, like odd things that are just like, why are they into like black leather?
A lot of that stuff is track based.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why I'm saying it's now I'm supposed to. I'm into S&M. Oh, well, now I'm supposed to be wearing black leather.
And then you got the pedophiles.
Yeah. I mean, all of the negative stuff that we're seeing currently is all dramatizations in one form or another of past track incidents that have been laid in on individuals, and these people are unwilling participants to, and they can't help themselves because they're so at the adverse effect of it. And LRH figured out a way to handle this stuff and get people out of it. But, we need to get over certain things like sexism, racism, that sort of a thing, because these are all things that even Scientologists, sometimes especially Scientologists, fall prey to. And the fact of the matter is whether you have a penis or a vagina, or you're black or you're white or yellow or red or light brown or whatever, it's just a body. We're all Thetans in bodies. And these things need to be overcome as Scientologists just as much as they do on the rest of the planet. And the only way you're going to get people to do that is to get 3 feet behind their head and realize they're not their body. And it isn't going to stop. And unfortunately, Scientology barely got out of the gate before it was dismantled, because it really worked.
I've noticed something odd, for example, where I think that there are people who are below tone too, and they tend to do this thing where they add like a color red to their hair, and it kind of looks cool, but it sort of doesn't, because then it kind of looks like the person's like, you know, bleeding from their head or something. But it's another little odd thing that humans do that I notice. It's just like, what's with these people that put a little red coloring in their hair?
Well, you know, I think because
it's connected with the low tone thing, as in, like, if there, you know what I mean? Like, as in, it just became a fashion trend and everyone was doing it, then fair enough. But it's not really that popular. But you do know some people are doing it, and they tend to be below tone too. And you're like, what the hell? Oh, it's just weird. Well,
it's a form of being interesting instead of interested. That's what people tend to do with bodies, is they interesting or interested. And interesting is far more aberrative than interested. And that's why, you know, if you look at anything where you just kind of stop in your tracks and go, what the fuck? You go, interesting, not interested.
Like, what about the Gothic people? Is that like just backtrack shit?
Interesting. They're trying to be interesting.
I know, but they're also, it's got to be some sort of backtrack shit, because if I would be interesting, I would paint my face blue or something, but they're like, it's like they wear like dog collars, and then they like, and then it's just like, what the hell?
Yeah, well, you're also looking at a form of ARC, and there's commonality, because commonality is reality. And so you get these certain genres where you've got, like you say, the Gothics, and, you know, you've got the tattoo people, and you've got there's any number of them.
The transgenders?
You know, these different,
like
the different phylums and stuff like that. But it all comes down to interesting. I'm not interesting as a man, so I need to be a woman. Then I will be interesting. That's all it comes down to. That's the lowest common denominator on that, is because they want to be more interesting instead of interested. Interested is high toned. Interesting is low toned. That's where, I mean, you just break it down to that. It's black or it's white. It's 1 or it's 0. Whatever you want to call it. It's a binary thing, and that's on the track. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of like it when they go to the point where they actually become Gothic or transgender, or like where they clearly change their valence. Like, it's obvious, because you can actually see them physically trying to make their body into a different personality. You know what I mean? Like, anyway, it's just interesting, because you're like, you know how as people go, you know, below tone 2, they start to go out of their own valence or whatever. And it's just funny when you see them actually physically go along with it all, and they become a whole different character, and you're like, what the hell?
Right. Well, it's very rare that you see a 30-year-old Gothic person. You know, they tend to grow out of that sort of a thing, and a lot of that is the dramatization of the drugs that are in their system when they're in their youth, because basically anybody from about 11 or 12 on up to about 19 or 20 is a drug addict. It's just that they're not doing over-the-counter or street. They're just doing their own body's drugs. And it really screws with them. Drugs have a huge effect on the composite being, because like LRH says, the drugs on this planet pale in comparison to the drugs on the whole track. And it really
Wow.
screws people up and sends them down the track. And yeah, I mean, we haven't even come close to some of the drugs that have been on the whole track. So that's the liability of being in a body, because the body is a chemical making machine in order to drive its purposes.
Yeah, well,
And
I noticed with a lot of, like, especially there's that stereotypical bitchy teenager sort of personality, and I noticed with me it was like, yeah, as soon as puberty kicks in and stuff, and I guess these chemicals start getting made by your body, it keys you in. You start having case problems.
right, well, and that's the liability of a composite being. That's why I say you need, when I say you, I mean the royal you, need to get up the bridge as soon as possible, because you're not going to differentiate out where these sources are coming from as far as thoughts, impulses. I mean, on and on and on and on. And the only way that you're going to be able to do that is to become less of a composite being and to become yourself and in valence. That's what the OT levels do, at least, all the way up to OT7, through OT7. And, on the CBR bridge, that continues some for a couple more levels. But it's a big deal. And the most valuable particle in the physical universe is admiration/attention, period. And that's why you see this planet behaving the way that it is, because you're dealing with composite beings that are being pushed around by their composite case for attention. That's it. Interested, attention. Those are the most aberrative points for any being on this planet. And if we were to resolve those 3 points, and only those 3 points, we would no longer have any wars, no insanity, no killing, no rapes, no pedophilia, nothing. And that's what LRH was shooting for. And the guys that run this planet have got one hell of a composite case on them. And they're probably being pushed around by something far more sinister, off-world, if you ask me. That's just my opinion. To keep this whole thing going. Because you don't want to let the inmates out of the asylum, because there's an awful lot of other societies around here that might be at risk if we were to go too far astray. In our current state, at least.
Oh, so you're saying, yeah, so good guys are keeping us here as well, basically, because we're just a corrupted civilization.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's sort of like the trash heap sort of a thing.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's all relative. The people that may or may not be keeping us here, I don't even say people, the entities, beings, whatever you want to call them. This is a harsh reality. What you see here on Earth and the way things are, it's not that much different out in the rest of the galaxy. Okay? The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. I'm not saying it's this way in all of the galaxies. But the fact of the matter is if you're in the physical universe, there's some of this stuff going on. And it's going to be aberrative, because the physical universe, by its basic building blocks nature, is aberrative. It persists. The reason why it persists is because there's a lie behind it. And that's why you see the things that go on this planet and in this universe. And why would God ever let these things happen and all of this stuff, is because it's a screwed up universe and we don't belong in it. We're not part of this universe, but we find it interesting as a universe. So we become interested, and to the point, and at the point that we become interested, we give up our own determinism to a degree, sometimes a great degree, in order to play the game in the physical universe. Because if you're not on the chessboard, what are you going to be doing?
Wow. You said, I think you mentioned this in a message to me. You said that by doing knots, you can stop internet attacks. And I imagine I think you're actually talking about like physical internet, like computer attacks, right? Not this psychic stuff. What the hell were you talking about there?
Okay, what was the quote again?
Well, you just said something like, I mentioned how I was getting internet attacks and problems with my computer, and you were saying knots can help you with that, or something like that.
Sure.
How can knots stop OSA from attacking my computer?
Well, I can't go into the details, unfortunately, but the fact of the matter is that electrons are easy to push around, and as a thetan, and from a knots perspective, well, I don't even say from a knots perspective. Let's just look at it from an axioms perspective. Is that a thetan can be anything? It could be a box. It could be a graphics card. It could be a peace lily. It could be a pillowcase. I mean, you can convince a thetan that they're anything, and that's the beauty, and that's the downfall of a spiritual being, is that they're really, really capable, but they can be really, really dumb at the same time. And to have that kind of ability can be a double-edged sword. So with that in mind, and you extrapolate that from the viewpoint of nefarious influences, if you could get a thetan to be anything, and you had that technology, and you were going to use it for your own means as less than positive government entity or black ops or black shadow government or whatever, that's one hell of a weapon. And it has been on the whole track since the early days. And that's what we're trying to unwind on knots and on Excalibur and so on, is that type of phenomena, because a thetan can be duped into being anything and
well,
can
hold
control.
on a second. I thought this internet attack that I'm talking about, well, I was kind of assuming that it's just physical hardware viruses or remotely controlling my computer, but you're suggesting that some of it can actually be entity possibly messing with my computer.
Sure.
Okay. All right.
You know, that's probably unreal to most of our listeners, but it's a fact, because the fact of the matter is that when you get into the upper end of the bridge, or you even do LRH's original OT 4, 5, and 6, which are right after OT 3 originally, that's when you did them. He has you demonstrate that these potentials are extant. So with that in mind, it's not like you have to wait till the end of the bridge to get the toy prize and the box of Cracker Jacks, because it's right after OT3. And these are things that he has you do, that he has you present and manifest as an OT in order to finish that OT level.
Yeah, see, this is why when you hear Liam Remini talk about the crappiness of the OT levels, and she's just talking about the church and that, it's just amazing, because you're just like, wow, how do you attest to anything if you haven't got something out of it, you know?
Well, that's what I'm saying, is she's never done real Scientology, so why even listen to her? Because she it's all relative.
Yeah, and I don't feel like she's that ethical as well, because I feel like with me, I would like what happened to me was I did the grades, and I sort of started to run into some problems, and I saw things were not quite right, and I started asking questions, and I didn't get up to OT3 or OT5 and then be involved for 20 years and blow. It all happened within 5 years, because I'm actually like ethical, and I'm like, hold on, well, I'm not going to attest to this if I don't feel like I've achieved that, and something's not quite wrong here, and you know what I mean? Whereas these other people, they just go all the way up, and it's like I heard one lady who said that she was doing OT3 or something, probably OT2, and she just went out for a coffee, and like she went out to do this drill, and she did it for like half an hour, and she was supposed to do it for like 3 hours or whatever, and then she just went and went shopping, and then came back and attested to it. And I was just thinking, wow, you really have bad moral fibers. Like the fact that you're treating your OT levels like this, and it's like, yeah, okay, the church did some wrong things and you're criticizing the church, but also, man, you were quite the accomplice in there. Like you were the one who was supposed to be drilling OT exercises and you were gone shopping. It's so outrageous.
Right. Well, like LRH says, there's only two ways you can be wrong: being there and communicating. So that pretty much solves that. I mean, that's LRH is the ultimate distiller of concepts, and that's what that is: being there and communicating. Well, they were in the church; they were doing things they shouldn't have been doing, and they weren't doing their OT levels. So they were being there and communicating, doing those things. Okay, boom, end of story. That's the ultimate end game phenomena of the whole thing, is that these people are there, they're in a suppressive environment, they're PTS, and then they're not even doing what they're supposed to be doing on top of it. And you can't go PTS to something unless you committed an overt against it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's roll this back. So how would I handle somebody like that, or Leah Remini? Is I'd go back and I'd find out where were they last doing well, and then I'd prep check the area, and I'd probably do quadrudes and overts, and do a life repair on her and straighten her out and find out what she didn't get and clear up her basic words in Scientology. And I guarantee you she probably doesn't even know how to define Satan or something like that. That's what it all comes down to. Is being there
Or she might be able to say some rote definition of Satan, like it's a blah, 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 but she doesn't actually have a conceptual understanding of the idea Satan,
Right. And that comes down to what we talked about in one of the earlier podcasts, is if you're doing Scientology and you're not being honest with yourself, you're screwed.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what a lot of these people, like the Chris Sheltons and the Leah Remini's and stuff, they don't have a lot of personal integrity, in that's how they got so far into it, in that they weren't honest with themselves and stuff. And where someone like me, who's just honest, who bluntly says shit, just can get into heaps of trouble early and then leave. You know what I mean? Like, because I got a lot of personal integrity. I've got that. What's the thingo? The code of honor. I stick to that hardcore. You know what I mean? It's just I naturally do it. It's just who I am. Whereas these other people, they don't have that code of honor in there.
Right, and that comes back to the interpretation of the written word. And I don't mean written word from a gospel standpoint. I just mean from the written word and or the spoken word, because where a person is at on the tone scale, and we talked about this in the last podcast, where they're at on the tone scale has everything to do with the way that they duplicate what it is that they read, because that's they're seeing it through the lenses of the tone level that they're at. And so they may be misinterpreting everything they read because they're putting it through this filter of this tone level. And that's why 50% of the gains are from training and 50% of the gains are from processing. And like LRH says, what do you get when you get somebody who's not trained and they're an OT? They're a big, dumb Satan. And that's what you run into with these people, is they don't understand the technology behind it in order to stay out of the trap. They just got out of the trap and then they start winding back down the drain again. That's the problem with Leah Remini, is she's not a trained auditor. And she's easily duped by people who, they have the ability to manipulate and tell them what they want to hear in order to get her to do what they want her to do, and all, and it just goes on and on. I feel bad for her. I think she's a super capable individual. She's got a lot of horsepower, but it's misguided. And with a lot of these people, it's misguided, and they need to get straightened out. And I don't really have any interest in straightening these people out from an auditor standpoint. I mean, I wouldn't refuse them, but that's the issue. That's what you're dealing with, and it isn't going to get any better. Fighting people like this, at some point you just have to shut YouTube off or shut the TV off or whatever, and find new people and start fresh. And okay, take two. We're going to do this, and this is how we're going to do it. And we're going to do it the way the old man says, and we're not going to do anything else. And we're going to get you up the bridge. And we're not only going to get you up the bridge, we're going to train you. We're going to have you co-audit, because you're going to learn how to do it as you do it. And that's the thing. It's both sides of the bridge. And the most dangerous people to Scientology ever in the field, the biggest critics of Scientology, have always been the ones that received Scientology but never understood and learned what it was behind what they had received. They are the ones who have brought Scientology down.
Yep. Okay, so I've got two more things I want to ask you. I want to wrap up this thing where you're talking about your past life, right?
Okay.
Like, because you said you worked with LRH and stuff, and I want you to say, like, what that was like and what things happened and what he was like and stuff.
Well, long and the short of it, I enjoyed Scientology, and I did Scientology almost 24/7, 365. It was the funnest game I'd had last lifetime. I'm not upset about leaving the game when I did. For whatever reason it was, the fact of the matter is if I wasn't here today in a new body, a younger body, probably more specifically, I think that would have been a bad thing. And I might not have any Scientology to come back to, and I come back and I'm trying to put it here and keep it here for myself and for other people because it's that important. And I wouldn't have been able to do that turning, probably 80-something. So everything happens for a reason. I know a lot of people don't like that expression, but Satan postulates and perceives, and in some inextricable way, it happened the way that it did, and I'm glad that it happened the way that it did, because now I have a lot more comparable magnitudes than I would have had otherwise.
Okay, and so you were on post at the Old St. Hill, right?
I was a public at Old St. Hill. I did help out with things. I was one of the early adopters of the Sea Org. I was on the ship and dropped the body remotely from the ship when I died. I wasn't on the ship when I died, but I was in the Sea Org at the time, and that's the proximity was very close to where I was born, which was, East Africa. So it was, a stone's throw away. And found my dad, who I had past experience with on the track, some of it positive, some of it negative, but I recognized him as an old ally. And within 2 years of me being in the family, he picked up a Dianetics book, went to a lecture, and started doing Scientology, and so I was in Scientology again.
So hold on a second. So just out of curiosity, why weren't you on the you passed away off the ship because you were probably in a hospital or something, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And what? So what post were you doing while you were on the ship?
Honestly, I don't know what the post was. I haven't run across anything in session that demonstrated that to me clearly. I think based off of what I can pull out of it at this very moment talking to you, it had something to do with supercargo, which would have been the org exec later on down the road. So I was involved in that area somewhere. Might have been, I can't say that I was supercargo, but I was up there on the org board, and I was one of the early adopters of it, and of the Sea Org. And in so doing, I was privy to do some of the upper level activities, having gone clear in 56 and things like that. So I was in a pretty good position to help LRH out with those things, and who would say no? So, and LRH was and is one of my best friends. He wasn't perfect. I don't think anybody is. I've never met anybody that was more willing to take on a level of responsibility for so many people and do the things that he did. I've never met anybody that comes even close this lifetime.
Okay.
I think he was a really great guy, really intelligent guy, and he was an actor in his own play. That he didn't know what he was doing when he got started. And one thing led to another, and he talked to a lot of people. I don't think that LRH was an MI6 operative.
Yeah, neither do I.
I don't agree with that. I'm not saying Scott's crazy or anything like that, but I didn't see that in him at all. But I don't think mankind has ever had a better friend, and that's not just PR. That's how I feel, and I miss him greatly.
Yeah, well, I think the evidence indicates that he was a former naval intelligence officer, and that he left and did his own thing, and they were shitting themselves because he knew stuff that intelligence officers know and stuff, and it seems like instantly from 50 onwards, the government did not like him and what he was doing because he was. You know, he knew about them. Yeah, he'd gone rogue and stuff. So have you? Do you know what your name was in your past life, and have you looked up the records of people who were at St. Hill at that time and stuff like that?
I have not been able to pull my name out on it, but I've never had any auditing on it. It was one of those things that if it came up, it came up. If it didn't, it didn't. My original clear date was incorrect, and then I got that corrected when I started OT5, which is part of one of the first steps of OT5 is to properly date when you went clear and everything like that. It just hasn't had any importance to me because what's in a name? It's dust and bones and all that stuff. So I've never really put a lot of attention on it. I'm sure I could probably come up with it in session, but sitting here right now, I can't. I could tell you that I was female, but that's about it.
All right, and what's your? You obviously agree that PDH does exist, and people are getting sent into Scientology to bring it down. Yep.
Yeah. I think that's the case.
Yep.
I don't see any reason why it would be anything else. That's my knowingness. My perception is that's what's happening, and I'll stick to that.
Yep. And with the OT8 that the church delivers, is there any indies who deliver that exact same OT8 that the church delivers, or do indies just totally think that the church has just issued us tech and they don't use it?
I don't think that there's any semblance of resemblance to what the church is delivering as OT8. I think that would be a really bad idea, and I think that what we have in the field is as OT8. There's a couple of different versions, and I think they all have their merits. Are all best guesses as to what OT8 should be, and I don't think it would hurt anybody to do any of the versions that are out there, as well as looking at Excalibur, which is the next logical step for me. I can't speak for anybody else, but I think whatever the church has got is solely designed to keep them on the comeback, much like the pharmaceutical industry does in the medical field. Is it doesn't solve the problem; it just keeps them coming back. That's pretty much what's happened to the church.
Well, and there's many things that the church does as well that mirror corporations and the way SPs operate. In that they push for monopolies of fields, and they just treat their people like crap. And but Pierre Etier, like he talks about some of his, like he talks about OT9, OT10, OT11, that sort of stuff. How can he talk about these things? Like, was he privy to them within the church? Like, he managed to see these secret OT levels? Because I remember, I think on OT11 or something, he mentioned it's about remote viewing. I mean, how the hell does he know that?
I really couldn't say, because when I talked to him in 2005, unless he was withholding the information from me, which is a possibility, I don't know why he would, based off of the candor of conversation that we were having at the time, the several
What does
conversations.
candor mean?
Candor being very upfront and very honest, forthright. They were, the conversations had a very good candor to them, CANDOR. I don't think that he knew at the time. He had told me that the original OT8 materials had been disposed erroneously, and then he reneged on that a year or two later. Why, I don't know. I haven't spoken to him in several years. I think he's a very fine person. But, it's one of those things. I mean, there's other things that I could say that would be very impolite to say, so I will refrain from saying those things. But the proof is in the pudding as far as that goes. And I don't think that the CBR materials have any semblance of all of the answers either. I think Pierre's OT levels are probably based from his viewpoint and his training, which is far greater than mine.
Does Pierre say that he actually wrote them himself, or does he say that he pinched them from the church?
No, he wrote them himself based off of the data that he has.
Oh, okay. I don't mean to get into criticizing then. So he criticizes Captain Bill for writing some of the OT levels himself, yet at the same time he's doing the same thing.
Well, I can't argue with you. That's a fact, and it's an indication that there's something going on there.
It's just interesting. It's interesting because you get. As Indies, we have to come together and stop fighting, because it's like unless someone actually says, "Hey, I was there in the '80s. I actually stole these OT materials from the church. I've got them. These are the original LIH OT materials," which no one seems to be claiming, are they? No one's saying they did that.
Right. Well, I'll give you a prime example. Nobody has anything valid other than one issue that is out there that has an OT8 routing that's on the internet and comes with all of the upper bridge materials that has the routing for OT8. That's the only issue. And it is the best issue, and I think we talked about that in the last show, that it has the simplicity that you would expect to see on OT8. It's a great issue, and I have to go back and read it every couple of months because it is so much for me, and I'm like, God damn, what did that just say?
Oh, that was it was about why Satan's mock-up. Why
Satan's mock-up. And that is as close as we can get to what OT8 is about. But to give you a prime example, we came across a former Class 12 estate sale. The Class 12 had been one of the original Class 12s at Flag, and they had basically a treasure trove of notes and references and everything like that for the original L's. And we spent months putting them together to codify them and everything like that. And I went public with it that we had gotten L11 put together, and there were some parts to L11 that everybody in the field was missing because the L's were put together by memory alone. And then when I said this, I was immediately attacked from multiple directions, Pierre being one of them, which, hey, that's fine. If you want to attack me on something, I'm just telling you I've got something that the field doesn't have, and I don't own it, so I can't give it to you. Somebody else does that I'm working with, and I've signed a non-disclosure agreement to that wise on it. And I'm not saying, we have something you don't, but being immediately attacked, it gives you a barometer of what we're dealing with in the field. because it's dog eat dog. And until that stops, we will not get anywhere as Scientologists in the field, and Scientology will flounder, if not sink. That's my opinion. And then that particular incident, more than any of the others, really brought that to my attention, that until we can all agree and work together, and I've had people say, well, why don't you give us this particular portion of L11 so that we can do it? Well, it's not mine to give, or I would, and that's what I've said. And that's up to the person who owns that particular reference. So, it's very much the same thing like you're saying that Pierre has said that some negative things about CBR's bridge, but he's making his own bridge at the same time. So this competitive almighty dollar thing gets in the way every time. And until we can get around that, I'm working on putting together an auditors summit sometime with any luck next year, to where we can get all of the major players in the same room, get their rudiments in, get their cramming rudiments in, clean everybody up, and get everybody on the same page so that we're all working together in a unified front. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to agree with everyone on everything. But if we're all not working in the same direction, and we're not there to help each other, get them some free auditing if they need it, whatever the deal is. And everybody's going to have to pony up and say, I'm not always right. I've been wrong sometimes in the past, me included. Nobody's perfect. But if we don't work together soon, there's not going to be anything left.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great idea for a summit for auditors, because it'll just be good for you to all communicate, and I imagine it'll definitely increase your knowledge and your, like, as a whole, of working out whatever you're doing. It would have to help you all, to hear what this person's doing, even if you disagree with it, but just to know what that person's doing, what they think, and what this person thinks. I think that'll be a really good idea.
Yeah.
But it says,
sit in a circle of chairs, and have a mediator and go, all right, so Pierre, how do you feel about this? And what do you think about so-and-so? And that sort of a thing. And get this out in the open and everything, instead of all of this backstabbery and not sharing PC folders and not being upfront and, having problems with other people and what they've either created or found or researched or whatever. I mean, it's just, everybody needs to get over their own egos and get along and do what LRH said, build a better bridge.
And the same thing happens in the UFO community, because people have their UFO groups and they want to find out the truth, and they have the exact same, like, literally they will be like saying, oh, Stephen Greer thinks blah blah blah, and this person thinks blah blah blah, right. and they all, because they're all just trying to find out the truth, but they have different ideas. And then of course they have the big thing in that there's this huge third party there just trying to bring them down and make them all fight. But I think it says something really big, that there's no indies that are using the OT8 that the church are using. I mean, isn't that just a really bad, like, it's implying that the church must have a really bad OT8?
Yeah, well, there's no indies using the original OT1 either. So,
yeah.
it's there's several different points.
Hold on a second. What? There's no indies using the original OT1?
Yeah, that the church uses. The church's original OT1, which is far different from LRH's OT1.
Oh, yeah. But that, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, cool. I thought you meant the actual original proper OT1, no indies are using it. I would have thought, no.
I'm saying, yeah, what the church uses, their version of, quote, original OT1 is far different than LRH's version.
Wow, yeah, they've messed with it.
There's no similarity whatsoever.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Anyway, any other questions?
I do have some more. I mean, it's up for you if you want to do one more. I have enough questions for one more. I mean, the whole first hour we went into just epic deepness. It was just like, whoa. Are you up for doing a part 4?
If the questions are worthy, that's fine.
Well, it's more. I've got some questions about sort of more. There's some tech relation stuff like power rundown, CCHRD, and then a little bit about Markabians. But I mean, I think I want to do it. I'm keen on doing it. It's up to you.
Yeah, let's shoot for like 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, yeah. All right. Thanks for speaking to me, Jonathan Burke. That was good. If anyone wants to get audited by you, they can, they go to the website, the Advanced Organisation of the Great Plains.
Yep, ao-gp.org or Traveling Knots Auditor at unseen, unseen.is is our email address, or they can find me on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, which is under the Advanced Org of the Great Plains, and we respond with Facebook Messenger pretty promptly.
All right.
So any of those different comm lines.
Yep. And I want to ask you in the next interview about CST and what happened to LRH in the 80s. Yeah. Anyway, all right. I'll see you later.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye. Eddie. See ya.
Bye-bye.
All right, so that was the interview with Jonathan Burke. It was part 3 with Jonathan Burke. I hope you liked it. I liked it. The first hour and a half was deep. Now, before we end off, we've got an LRH quote. The purpose of the mind is to solve problems relating to survival. Intelligence is the ability of an individual, group, or race to resolve problems relating to survival. And that's from the original thesis, Dianetics, the original thesis by L. Ron Hubbard. That's a very fundamental quote. And I think it is life-changing, I think. Because you sort of know then what to do with your life. You've got to solve problems relating to your survival. So you've got to look around and solve problems. And that the more intelligent you are, is the more problems you can solve. And you might look at a homeless person on the side of the street and you can tell that their ability to solve problems is very low. That's why they're barely surviving. But someone who's made a success of themselves off their own bat, or even someone who doesn't want to really make much of a success of themselves, but they're surviving just fine, they've got some intelligence. They can solve problems. And every day, I think Scientologists do this a lot. I mean, you sort of learn it from doing the whole battle plan thing. You just learn to tick off things off that list. You learn to solve problems. Boom, 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 boom. Because you can argue that anything's a problem. Like if you have to pay a phone bill, it's a problem. Even though it's not really like a complicated problem, but it's still something you have to do. It's something that needs attention. And you just go through that list and you just tick off, boom, 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 boom. And if you just keep on solving problems, like let's say you got a problem with your carpet or whatever, you solve that. And the next day you paint the wall. The next day you pay your phone bill. The next day you get a new job. And the next day you buy new pants. Or you just tick off a list of problem after problem after problem after problem. You keep on solving them. Eventually you're pretty damn good. And at the start you might be shit. Yeah, but after you keep on solving problems more and more and more, you build a great life around yourself. You have a car that doesn't have problems with it. You have glasses that aren't broken. You have glasses that aren't scratched. You have taps that aren't broken. You have intellectual ideas that you understand because you looked them up. You studied them. So that's what uptone people do, and that's what you do. You just continue doing things and solving problems, and it's great. So it's a really good quote. I'll just read it out again because it's deep. The purpose of the mind is to solve problems relating to survival. Intelligence is the ability of an individual, group, or race to resolve problems relating to survival. And that's a really good quote as well because it defines what intelligence is, because I've come across some people who have really high IQs, yet they're idiots. Like they're aberrated, they're sickos, and they don't look like they're surviving well, and I don't think they have a good ability to solve problems related to survival. I just think they have some super memory, so they're able to appear to be smart, but they're not really smart. You know, there are people with Asperger's, with like autism, and they have really high IQs, but that's not intelligence. They're not really intelligent. L. Ron Hubbard is saying right here in this quote, he's saying smartness is your ability to solve problems relating to your survival, and that's what it damn well is. I absolutely agree with that. Because if you look at someone who can do a maths equation really well and they have an IQ of like 145, yet they don't know that much about the world, and they haven't even checked their mailbox, and their house is a mess or something. You know, to me, that person's not intelligent. I'm not going to call that person intelligent. He's not. But you might come across someone who maybe doesn't have a super high IQ and maybe wasn't that good at maths at school, but you look around and he's in a house and there's all these problems have been solved. He's in a good house and he's got a good family, and he's solved all these problems relating to survival, and he's got a good job and stuff. That guy's intelligent. Okay? Because it's kind of hard working out. There's like a difference. I think there are some people who are witty, or maybe, witty, but they're not really intelligent. It's different. It's interesting. And if you look at how much L. Ron Hubbard achieved in his life, really makes you realize how intelligent he was, because it's just like, wow, he solved a lot of problems relating to survival and a whole lot more. He didn't just survive, he did a lot more than that. Anyway, that's it for the podcast. It's time for you to climb back out of this rabbit hole, out of this interesting Scientology world. If you have any good Scientology news, Facebook posts, or jokes, then send them to andynolch@hotmail.com. Send in those wins, those auditing wins. Thanks for listening. I've been your host, Andy Nolch, the Space Cowboy. You have been listening to the Indie Scientology podcast. And until next time, keep evolving and get up that bridge.